Welcome to Wife Cheating Story. I hope you have an enjoyable and relaxing time listening. Let's get started.
Before we begin, let me know where you're tuning in from down in the comments. And if you enjoy this story, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our next tale. Tyler couldn't shake the feeling that everything about this evening was slightly off, like a stage set too carefully for a drama he hadn't agreed to perform in. The moment he and Vanessa stepped through the towering doors of Alinea, Chicago's most prestigious restaurant, he felt as if a spotlight had trapped them both. 3 sentences in, he already sensed the hush under the elegant chandelier was more than just the restaurant's famed ambiance. It was the hush of foreshadowing, the calm before an unthinkable storm. Alinea was legendary for its refined atmosphere and artistic cuisine. Majestic white tablecloths floated like gentle waves, while small lanterns cast golden arcs of light across the polished hardwood floors. Tonight, however, Tyler found himself hardly registering the decor he'd always admired. Instead, he was consumed by the anxious flutter in his chest and the forced, hollow smile on Vanessa's face. He tugged at the collar of his charcoal gray blazer custom-fitted, though he suddenly felt constrained inside it. The soft murmur of wealthy patrons surrounded them, punctuated by the discreet clink of crystal glasses. Across from him, Vanessa looked ravishing in a pale blue cocktail dress that clung to her figure like a second skin. An understated diamond pendant shimmered at her throat, catching the gentle glow of overhead lighting. She radiated confidence, though it felt like a brittle shield ready to crack. Their waiter, with impeccable timing, arrived to take the wine order. Vanessa didn't wait for Tyler to speak. "A glass of Merlot," she said quickly, her voice quivering beneath its forced cheer. He glanced at her, eyebrows slightly raised, recalling how she rarely touched red wine at home. Maybe it was the excitement of dining in this elite establishment, yet something in her gaze suggested otherwise. As soon as the waiter disappeared, Vanessa leaned forward, swirling the water in her glass absently. "I hope you don't mind if we skip the tasting menu," she said with a too bright smile, not quite meeting Tyler's eyes. "I'm a little on edge tonight." "On edge?" Tyler repeated, resting his forearms on the table. He tried to keep his voice calm, but inside a quiet alarm was ringing. For the past few months, he had sensed a shift in her, an unnamed restlessness that bristled beneath her usual warm demeanor. She gave a fleeting laugh. "Oh, it's nothing. Not really." She flicked her gaze around the room, scanning the lounge area beyond the main dining hall. "Well, I invited a friend to join us for a drink after dinner. I hope that's okay." A slight frown furrowed Tyler's brow. "A friend? I didn't realize—" "Oh, I forgot to mention it," Vanessa interrupted too quickly, downing half her glass of water in a single gulp. Her eyes darted across the tables, as though she expected someone to walk in any minute. "Don't worry, Tyler, it's just someone I met recently. Someone interesting." The word interesting floated in the charged air. Tyler's gut tightened. "You've never mentioned any new friend," he noted. "Everything all right?" She waved a dismissive hand, turning her attention to the fresh Merlot now arriving at their table. "Really? It's fine. Relax. It's grown-up stuff." That cryptic comment hung between them, stinging him in ways he couldn't articulate. The Vanessa he married never used that patronizing tone with him. Once upon a time, they'd shared everything, dreams, fears, even the smallest detail of each other's day. Tyler drummed his fingers against the table, attempting to keep frustration at bay. The corners of her lips curved into a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. As the waiter poured her wine, she grasped the stem, bringing it to her lips with uncharacteristic eagerness. He inhaled quietly, letting the swirl of roasted garlic and truffle from the open kitchen remind him to stay calm. "Vanessa," he said gently, "if there's something I should know." She stared into the dark red liquid. The overhead lights painted faint circles in the wine. "Not tonight, okay? I just want to enjoy dinner." Before Tyler could press further, the waiter reappeared with their amuse-bouche tiny, precise bites arranged on an artist's palette. Vanessa barely acknowledged them. She took another swig of Merlot, her expression alternating between forced sociability and a hidden urgency that made Tyler's pulse throb in his temples. He glanced out across the restaurant, noticing how every detail remained impeccable. Starched napkins folded like origami, votive candles flickering behind frosted glass. This was a place he'd once found comfort in, celebrating business deals or anniversaries. Tonight it felt like the stage for a tragedy about to unfold. "You've changed," he wanted to say. Instead, he swallowed the words and forced a polite smile as he tried to chat about the upcoming product launch at his family's manufacturing firm. His voice sounded flat to his own ears, and Vanessa nodded absently, uninterested. Halfway through dinner, an exquisite sea bass fillet Tyler barely tasted, she ordered a second glass of Merlot, then a third. Each time her laughter grew louder, but her eyes betrayed an almost desperate tension. Tyler's mind raced with questions. He pictured her phone calls late at night, her cryptic text messages, the new way she dressed whenever she left the house. But he always brushed it aside, telling himself it was a phase, that she just wanted variety in her routine. When dessert arrived, an elaborate chocolate souffle with a spun sugar garnish, Vanessa dabbed at her lips and tossed her linen napkin onto the table. "I'll be right back," she declared abruptly, standing so swiftly that the table shook. "I need to freshen up." Tyler nodded, a prickly worry tightening his chest. He watched her weave through the labyrinth of linen-clothed tables, each step poised, but her expression unreadable. Then she vanished into the corridor leading to the lounge. Almost immediately, a wave of dread rushed over him. He signaled for the check, anxious to follow her. But the bill took longer than usual, a minor glitch. The waiter apologized, tapping nervously on a sleek handheld device. The minutes dragged, and Tyler grew more restless with each second. Finally, after signing the receipt, Tyler hurried past the polished mahogany doors that led to the lounge area. Low lighting and velvet-cushioned seats created an intimate backdrop for hushed conversations. He scanned the bar, the clusters of well-dressed patrons clinking cocktails under modern pendant lights. And there, near the back wall, he spotted them. Vanessa seated in a corner booth, leaning toward a tall man in a navy suit. Something about the angle of her body and the tilt of her head spoke of more than casual acquaintance. Tyler froze mid-step, heat tingling at the back of his neck. She laughed at something the man murmured, then her hand almost imperceptibly slid beneath the table. The man's arm looped casually around her shoulders as if he'd done it 100 times. Vanessa's wide-eyed grin radiated a flirtatious energy Tyler hadn't seen in months. Heart-pounding, Tyler cleared his throat but couldn't make a sound. For a breath, he considered walking straight up to them, demanding an explanation. But seeing the way Vanessa's cheeks glowed with intoxication, or was it excitement, stopped him. He stood like a statue in the dim corridor, half hidden behind a potted palm. She glanced around, possibly sensing his presence, but her gaze never fixed on him. Instead, she locked eyes with the stranger, whose lips curved into a self-assured smile. It was the kind of smile that suggested he was used to this, used to wives or girlfriends who strayed from their men, who sought out some new flavor of intrigue in hidden corners. Tyler felt his stomach twist into an angry knot. He took a step forward, wanting to confront them both. But then a sharp, conflicting thought flashed in his mind. What if I make a scene? What if that's exactly what she wants? So he hesitated, hands clenching at his sides. "Chuyen kwai gi ang sai ra?" he whispered, the foreign phrase escaping him involuntarily. It was something he'd picked up during a business trip abroad, roughly translating to, "What the hell is going on?" Indeed, that question hung in the hazy lounge air like a challenge he wasn't sure he was ready to face. Vanessa leaned closer to the stranger tailor, presumably, and whispered something that made him chuckle. Tyler's heart hammered so loudly he thought the bartender might hear it. A chilling realization crept over him. This wasn't an ordinary slip or a single moment of poor judgment. It was part of a larger, darker puzzle that had been forming for months. He forced himself to breathe. "Keep it together," he told himself, the words sounding hollow in his head. "You don't even know what you're up against yet." Instead of marching over, Tyler swallowed hard and stepped back, slipping out of the lounge, back into the main hallway. The refined hum of conversation in the dining room felt worlds away from the slow-motion betrayal he'd just witnessed. His mind reeled, but his face went blank, as if some survival mechanism had taken over. She was crossing a line. No, she'd already crossed it, and he had no idea how deep she intended to go. Suddenly exhausted, Tyler pulled out his phone, checking the time. The evening had unraveled in less than an hour, and he felt like an outsider to his own life. Part of him wanted to storm back in, drag Vanessa away, demand an immediate explanation. Another part whispered that maybe this was only the beginning, a horrifying prologue to something bigger. As he made his way toward the coat check, staff members offered polite smiles. He gave them curt nods, determined not to let his chaotic emotions show. In the corner of his vision, he saw Vanessa's reflection in a decorative mirror still in the lounge, leaning in intimately toward that man. Tyler's breath caught, but he tore his gaze away. He had to gather his thoughts. He had to figure out how to deal with this calmly, carefully. Outside, a brisk Chicago wind whipped across his face. The shock of cold felt like a slap, grounding him. He stared at his car parked across the street, uncertain if he should wait or drive off. Though the swirl of betrayal and anger rushed hot through his veins, a small voice reminded him that every marriage had moments of tension. But this was more than tension. He stepped off the curb, deciding to wait by the car. Overhead, clouds veiled the moon and the sky rumbled with the distant promise of rain. It's fitting, he mused bitterly, because there's a storm brewing inside me too. Vanessa was still inside, likely flirting with that so-called friend, probably reveling in the sense of danger. Tyler leaned against the cold metal door of his sedan, heart stuttering. He had to know the truth behind this twisted scene, and though he didn't realize it yet, by the next morning, he would be forced to confront everything, every suspicion, every fear. That single question hammered at his temples, merciless. Chuyen Kwai Gi Ang Shai Ra? He had a feeling he'd soon find out. Tyler woke the next morning with an ache in his chest that felt heavier than any winter overcoat he'd ever worn. In the mild sunlight that filtered through the bedroom curtains, he tried to recall if the night before had all been a dream, some twisted figment of his imagination. But the emptiness on Vanessa's side of the bed told him it was stark reality. He made his way downstairs, noticing the swirl of steam from the coffee pot in the kitchen. Vanessa stood at the granite counter, her back turned to him. She wore a sleek robe, hair still mussed from a restless night. There was no leftover tension on her face, only a cool brightness in her gaze, as if the previous evening had been perfectly ordinary. "Morning," Tyler said, clearing his throat. A faint tension rippled in his voice. She glanced over her shoulder. "Good morning," she responded breezily, offering a half-smile. It was the kind of smile someone gives a casual acquaintance, not a husband of nearly 23 years. He approached, determination building in him. "About last night," Vanessa cut him off with an airy wave, pouring coffee into a mug. "Oh, Tyler, let's not make a big deal out of it. I had a drink with a friend, that's all." She carried her mug to the table, sat down, and flipped open a glossy home decor magazine, skimming the pages as if engaged in a harmless routine. He exhaled sharply. "You left me at the table, then I found you with that man." He paused. "Vanessa, who is he?" She sipped her coffee, her expression guarded. "His name's Taylor. We met at a social event a couple of weeks ago, some fundraiser Bridget dragged me to. He's interesting to talk to." She shrugged. "I told you. It's just something new." A wave of disbelief washed over Tyler. "Something new? That's all you can say?" She set her coffee down, eyes flashing. "You're blowing this out of proportion," she said, crossing her arms. "I needed a break from our usual routine. He's just a fresh face." His gut twisted, recalling how intimately she'd leaned toward Taylor in that lounge booth. This wasn't about conversation. But a part of Tyler hesitated. He didn't want to fling accusations if he didn't fully understand the extent of her involvement. He pressed a hand to the center of his chest, trying to steady his breathing. When she noticed his distress, she rolled her eyes. "Why do you look so tense?" she demanded. "What, you think I was going to run off with him?" Tyler's throat tightened. "I don't know what to think. You've been different for months distant. I've tried to understand, to ask what's wrong, but you brush me off." He paused, his voice lowering. "I need to know if you still respect our marriage at all." She let out a hollow laugh, flipping a page in the magazine without even glancing at it. "Of course I do, but you act like we're stuck in some rigid pattern, day in and day out." Tyler, we never try anything new anymore. It's always the same dinners, the same conversation, the same everything. Don't you ever crave change? He recalled how, when they first got married, they were content simply talking about life's little wonders, how a new coffee flavor tasted, what painting might look best in the living room. Now she spoke as though he were an anchor pinning her down. He took a slow breath, his thoughts drifting back to the moment he proposed to her all those years ago. She'd been so excited, practically glowing in a white sundress on a windy hillside near his parents' old estate. He remembered her youthful grin, the tears of joy she'd shed, promising a lifetime of loyalty. Where had that Vanessa gone? "That's not what marriage is, Vanessa," he said softly. "It's not about chasing thrills with someone else." She stood abruptly, almost knocking the magazine from the table. "You really don't get it," she snapped. "We've been married over 2 decades, Tyler. People evolve. I'm tired of you acting like I'm the same naive woman you married. I have my own desires, my own curiosity." "Curiosity," he echoed, voice strained. "Is that what last night was? A curious rendezvous?" She huffed, brushing past him to rinse her mug at the sink. "You always blow everything up." Then, as if to add insult, she glanced over her shoulder and said, "At least Bridget understands me. She's the only one who doesn't judge." Tyler stiffened. He knew that name. Bridget, Vanessa's friend who'd once bragged about her multiple divorces, who spouted edgy remarks about modern marriage whenever Tyler politely greeted her at gatherings. He'd felt uneasy about their friendship for some time, suspecting Bridget was feeding Vanessa unorthodox ideas about open relationships or hot wife trends. But hearing Vanessa actually defend Bridget's stance twisted the knife deeper. "She's not married for a reason," Tyler muttered under his breath. Vanessa caught the remark and shot him a scowl. "She's more open-minded than the rest of you, that's for sure." For a fleeting moment, she looked as though she wanted to say more. Instead, she just shrugged, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "I'm going to shower and head out. I promised Bridget I'd meet her for brunch. Don't wait up." The words "don't wait up" stung, an icy sign-off he never expected to hear from his wife. Before he could utter another argument, she was already halfway upstairs, the air still thick with unspoken accusations. Tyler stood alone in the quiet kitchen, the smell of fresh coffee mingling with the heavy residue of tension. Over an hour later, he found himself in the driver's seat of his SUV, heading toward downtown. The city skyline blurred by, a familiar route to his office, but his thoughts drifted far from business. He gripped the steering wheel, replaying the conversation with Vanessa. She said their life was too predictable, that she sought variety. Did she even realize the pain she was inflicting? It wasn't just last night that gnawed at him. It was the subtle, consistent changes in her behavior, the late-night phone calls she never explained, the new clothes that seemed designed for clubbing rather than dinner parties, the sudden interest in taboo topics, and the repeated mention of hot wife lifestyle, a phrase that had made him cringe when she first brought it up after reading some magazine article. He'd laughed it off, thinking it was just a silly trend. But apparently, it was more than silly to Vanessa. It was a seed that had taken root. By the time he reached the parking garage at his corporate building, Tyler's chest felt like a block of lead. He took the elevator up to the 17th floor, forcing a tight smile at employees who greeted him in the hallway. His mind wasn't on spreadsheets or quarterly earnings. It was stuck in the memory of Vanessa's cold stare, her brazen mention of the man named Taylor. Inside his private office, he closed the door and rested his forehead against the cool wood for a moment. "Get it together," he muttered. Work had never been an escape for him. He truly loved leading the family manufacturing company, built by his father and grandfather. But today, the lofty windows and modern furnishings felt suffocating. He sank into the leather chair behind his desk, his gaze wandering to an old framed photo on the shelf. Him and Vanessa on their 10th anniversary in Hawaii, both of them sun-kissed and smiling. In that memory, her laughter felt genuine and bright, a far cry from the forced giggle in last night's lounge. He let out a shaky sigh. A soft knock on his office door startled him. "Come in," he said, straightening up. The door opened to reveal Martin, his longtime friend and attorney. Martin was in his late 40s with short salt and pepper hair and had a knack for reading people's moods instantly. Hey, Martin greeted quietly, stepping inside. You okay, Tyler? You look... He hesitated, pressing his lips together. Stressed. More than usual. Tyler managed a half-hearted chuckle, beckoning Martin to sit. Understatement of the year, he muttered. He ran a hand through his hair, trying to keep the tremor out of his voice. I'm sorry, Vanessa and I had a situation last night. The attorney tilted his head, concern pooling in his eyes. Want to talk about it? For a moment, Tyler felt foolish, like he was burdening a friend with marital woes. But Martin was more than just his lawyer. He was the guy who'd stood by him at college graduation, then served as best man at his wedding. If there was anyone he could confide in besides Vanessa, ironically, it was Martin. Tyler exhaled. Long story short, I think she's seeing someone else. Or about to. Martin frowned, leaning forward. Has she said anything concrete? Tyler explained the tense dinner at Alinea, how she left him to meet this stranger, how he'd found them in the lounge. Martin nodded quietly, absorbing each detail. She doesn't see it as a problem, Tyler finished, voice cracking. She implies it's just something grown-up that I'm too stiff to understand. Martin tapped his fingertips against the armrest. I'm sorry, he said sincerely. That sounds incredibly painful. Tyler swallowed hard, gratitude mixing with the ache in his throat. I need to know if I'm overreacting, or if she's really crossing a line. The next words escaped him in a rush. Martin, do I need to consider protecting myself? The attorney gave a solemn nod. If you suspect serious infidelity, or if she's planning something like an open affair, it might be wise to ensure your assets and finances are safeguarded. He paused. And if things get worse, you might need evidence, legally speaking. It was as though a trap door had opened beneath Tyler's feet. Evidence, he echoed. So you're suggesting I what? Hire a private investigator? Martin hesitated. Look, you know I'm not the type to push divorce or anything extreme. But I've seen cases where one spouse blindsides the other financially, emotionally. If you have an ironclad prenup, that's one thing. But you have to be careful in these times. Some states aren't as black and white on adultery as they used to be, but having proof can still matter, especially if property division becomes contested. Tyler grimaced, a bitter taste coating his tongue. The idea of spying on Vanessa felt like betrayal in itself. But the memory of that man's arm draped over her shoulders last night replayed in his mind, fueling a sense of helpless rage. He bit the inside of his cheek. I love her, Martin. I never thought I'd even say the words divorce and Vanessa in the same breath. It's surreal. Martin reached out, giving Tyler's shoulder a supportive squeeze. I understand. You don't have to decide anything right now. But do consider your options. If you want, I can set up a meeting with an investigator I trust, Oscar Jacobs. He's discreet. At least you'll have clarity. Tyler's gaze dropped to the floor, the polished reflection of his face in the marble tiles looking haunted. Set it up, he heard himself say, the words feeling foreign. I can't live in this limbo. I need the truth. Martin nodded, pulling out his phone. All right, I'll reach out. But Tyler... He paused, voice gentle. I'm really sorry you're going through this. For a moment, Tyler said nothing. He just stared at the framed photo on the shelf, two people once completely in love, now separated by more than physical distance. Finally, he let out a shaky breath. So am I, he whispered. And as Martin quietly left the office to make the call, Tyler leaned back in his chair, heart throbbing. His world, once so stable, now teetered on the precipice of a betrayal he could barely comprehend. Tyler arrived home that evening, bracing for another confrontation. Instead, he found the house eerily calm. A pair of Vanessa's high heels lay discarded by the front door, but she was nowhere in sight. The living room's warm, amber lighting cast soft shadows on the walls, and he could hear a faint hum from the dishwasher. No sign of an argument, no slammed doors. He walked into the kitchen, jacket draped over his arm. On the marble island, a half-empty cup of tea and an open box of fancy macarons sat next to an unmissable copy of a magazine. Its cover title, Hot Wife Lifestyle, How to Spice Up Your Marriage. He froze, disbelieving that it was simply lying there in plain view. Taking a steadying breath, Tyler flipped the magazine closed. It stung like a direct insult. The notion that she was devouring such articles, then meeting strange men with that glint in her eye. Is this just a phase, or is she truly hell-bent on going further? He wondered. Just then, Vanessa's voice drifted from upstairs, carrying a note of laughter. "It's been so long since we had a proper girls' night," she said brightly. Must be on the phone, Tyler assumed. He moved to the base of the staircase, listening inadvertently. Yeah, I told him," Vanessa continued, sounding pleased with herself. There was a soft giggle. "Tyler was all frazzled about last night, but he'll come around. He just needs to loosen up." Another laugh, louder this time. "All right, Bridge. See you tomorrow. Brunch at 11. The mention of Bridget's name tightened the knot in Tyler's chest. He rapped his knuckles on the banister loudly, signaling his arrival. Moments later, Vanessa appeared at the top of the stairs in a fitted satin blouse and jeans that hugged her hips. She wore a conspiratorial smile that vanished the instant she noticed his somber expression. "Hi," she said, coming down with slow, measured steps. "Everything okay?" He glanced at the magazine on the counter. "I found your reading material," he said, voice stiff. "And I overheard you on the phone. You told Bridget I'll come around? That I just need to loosen up?" She reached the bottom step, crossing her arms. "Well, yes. You've been wound so tight about everything lately." He let out a mirthless laugh. "And you think hooking up with random men is the solution to that?" Vanessa's eyes flashed with annoyance. "Stop exaggerating. I told you last night Taylor is just a spark of excitement." She took a step closer. "Look, Tyler, after all these years, we're in a rut. Bridget and I were talking about how some couples find new experiences outside experiences and it can revitalize a marriage." The nerve in Tyler's jaw twitched. "You can't be serious," he said, struggling to keep his voice calm. "So, you're what's seriously considering hooking up with another man? And you expect me to be okay with that?" She bristled. "Don't talk to me like I'm some criminal. This is the 21st century, Tyler. People have open relationships. They explore. People also have respect for their spouses," he fired back. "At least that's what I thought we promised each other." He swallowed, remembering their wedding vows from decades ago. Then he gestured toward the magazine. "This is not just about spicing things up. It's about crossing a boundary you can't uncross." Vanessa's face darkened, a frustration building behind her hazel eyes. "You don't get it, do you?" She motioned vaguely at the pristine living room, the neat, comfortable life they'd built. "We have everything money status, a big house. But we're stale, Tyler. We've stopped living. I want more." He glanced at her hand, noticing her wedding ring catching the soft glow of the kitchen lights, shining ironically bright. "More?" he echoed, heart sinking. She let out a scoff, stepping around him. "You've become so boring," she muttered. "You used to be adventurous, spontaneous. Now you're just a CEO type, always methodical, always responsible. Where's the fun we used to have?" She turned to him, an unexpected sadness in her eyes. "I'm not trying to hurt you. I just don't want us to grow old resenting each other." He took a careful breath. "And Taylor is your solution? Lying, sneaking around, humiliating me in front of God knows who?" He paused. "Do you even realize how this looks? It's disrespectful, Vanessa." For a moment she faltered, her gaze shifting. But the moment of vulnerability vanished as quickly as it came. "If you'd join me in exploring something different, I wouldn't have to do it alone," she said quietly. "But you won't, right? You think it's sinful, or I'm losing my mind." She spread her hands. "I'm not losing my mind. I'm discovering new aspects of myself." In the tense silence that followed, Tyler felt an unexpected pang of sorrow. Part of him knew she was unhappy. That routine had bored her. But he never imagined she'd look outside their marriage to fill that void. His throat constricted as he realized how far apart they'd drifted. "Are we even on the same page about anything anymore?" he asked, voice hushed. She lowered her gaze, then shook her head with a small, almost regretful sigh. "I really don't know." The admission sliced through him like a cold wind. He stood there speechless as she brushed past him to grab her purse from the kitchen island. Her movement was brusque, not bothering to meet his eyes again. "Listen," she said, throwing the purse strap over her shoulder. "I'm heading out to pick up some groceries. We can talk more when I'm back. But please, Tyler, try to see my point of view." She walked to the door, paused, then murmured, "This is about us." "Not just me!" He wanted to shout after her, to tell her this was the farthest thing from about us. But the sound caught in his throat, and by the time he found his voice, the door was already clicking shut. He was alone with the swirl of fear and confusion clawing at his chest. He glanced around the too-quiet house, imagining the echoes of happier days. Christmas mornings, family dinners with their son Jackson, who was now away at college, game nights that ended with them dozing off on the couch in comfortable harmony. Those memories felt like they belonged to a different couple altogether. His phone buzzed on the counter. An email from Martin popped up, summoning him to a quick meeting to discuss an investigator named Oscar. Tyler's gut twisted. This was the path he was going down: investigations, legal considerations. It felt surreal, like an out-of-body experience. "God," he muttered, rubbing his temples. "How did it come to this?" He stepped into the living room where pale evening light filtered through the big windows. The house that once symbolized success now felt oppressive, as if the walls were mocking him with silent condemnation. "You can't fix this with money or charm." Sighing, Tyler dropped onto the sofa, phone still clutched in his hand. Images of Vanessa at the lounge flooded his mind, her laughter directed at that man, Taylor, the way she'd practically glowed under the dim lights. Am I truly that dull? He wondered. Have I failed her somehow? He pressed his palms to his eyes, trying to block out every ugly possibility. But the questions wouldn't fade. How far would Vanessa go for this so-called excitement, and how long before it's too late to save anything at all? A brisk knock on the heavy wooden door of Tyler's downtown office interrupted the anxious swirl of thoughts in his head. He quickly straightened his tie, cleared his throat, and called out, "Come in." Martin opened the door, stepping aside to let someone else enter. The stranger was tall and lean, with silver hair combed neatly back. He wore a simple navy blazer and held a small leather briefcase. His gaze was level and cool, like he'd seen 1,000 domestic dramas before and was unaffected by them all. "Tyler," Martin said quietly, closing the door behind them. "This is Oscar Jacobs, the private investigator I mentioned." Then, turning to Oscar, Martin added, "Mr. Stevens is a bit new to all this, so we appreciate any patience you can offer." Oscar nodded politely, extending a hand. "Mr. Stevens, pleasure to meet you." Tyler shook the man's hand, noting the firm grip. "Thanks for coming on short notice," he said, forcing a calm tone. Inside, his nerves buzzed with a mixture of dread and determination. They all settled around the small conference table in Tyler's office. Floor-to-ceiling windows displayed a sweeping view of Chicago's skyline, but none of them paid it much attention. Martin perched on the edge of a chair, while Oscar placed the briefcase on the table, snapping it open. "I understand you have concerns about your wife," Oscar began softly. "Martin has filled me in on the basics that you suspect an affair or potential affair." Tyler's jaw tensed. "I do." He paused, exhaling. "Though she claims it's not an affair, just some kind of experiment. Regardless, I can't ignore the evidence anymore." Oscar studied him, expression empathetic but professional. "I see. Typically in these cases, my approach is discreet. If you decide to move forward, I'll monitor her routines, document any suspicious meetings photos, timestamps, and so forth. Nothing flashy or invasive enough to draw attention. That said, if she's actively seeing someone, we'll likely gather the proof quickly." Tyler's stomach lurched. He hated the idea of having his wife followed, like she was a criminal. Yet last night's memories and her defiant tone reminded him why he was here. "I don't want to embarrass her," he said hoarsely. I need clarity. And if it goes beyond just flirtation." Oscar gave a curt nod. "Understood. I handle these matters with total confidentiality." He opened a thin folder, revealing a standard contract for investigative services. "Review this at your leisure, and once signed, I'll begin." Tyler reached for the contract, scanning the lines that spelled out hourly rates, confidentiality clauses, disclaimers. His throat felt tight. Is this really happening? He swallowed, forcing himself to remain composed, and penned his signature. "We'll want some basic details," Oscar continued, sliding a notepad toward Tyler. "Her schedule, vehicle description, known associates. Also, any relevant addresses, places she frequents. Friends, especially." Martin chimed in. "Bridget Caldwell is one such friend, possibly influences Vanessa's decisions." Tyler nodded, taking the pen with an unsteady hand. He listed off the make and model of Vanessa's car, a black Lexus coupe, and the usual places she might go: boutique stores, her Pilates studio, the upscale cafes. His chest tightened when he wrote down Bridget's name. He felt uncomfortably like a conspirator in a spy movie, except this wasn't Hollywood fiction. This was the disintegration of his own marriage. Once he was done, Oscar flipped the notepad closed, tucking it neatly into his briefcase. "I'll get started immediately. You'll receive regular updates, and any conclusive evidence will be compiled in a secure file. Typically, I'd ask for any hints of her routine tomorrow. She's meeting Bridget for brunch at some place downtown. Probably around 11 a.m., Tyler interjected, recalling the phone conversation he overheard. Oscar nodded once. "Good. I'll shadow her from there. With your permission, I might also place a small GPS tracker on her vehicle so we don't lose track if she drives to meet that other man, Taylor, correct?" "Yes," Tyler said bitterly. "Taylor. That's the name." Martin cleared his throat. "All right, that's settled. Tyler, you know how to reach me. And Oscar, if you find anything urgent, call me first. We'll handle the legal strategy." Oscar snapped his briefcase shut and rose from the table. "I'll be discreet," he repeated, tone measured. "Most of my clients prefer minimal confrontation until we have solid proof." Tyler stood as well, shaking the investigator's hand. "Thank you," he managed, though the words felt hollow. "Thank you for spying on my wife," he thought grimly. But he reminded himself that if Vanessa was crossing a line, he needed to know exactly how far. When Oscar exited, Martin lingered behind. The office fell silent, the hum of the city outside barely seeping through the thick glass windows. Tyler stared at the closed door, swallowing the lump in his throat. "You doing okay?" Martin asked gently. Tyler let out a shaky sigh, turning to his friend. "I feel horrible," he confessed. "I never thought I'd be a husband who hires a PI to follow his wife around. But what choice do I have? She's drifting away and I can't stop it." Martin gave a sympathetic nod. "For what it's worth, Tyler, you're handling this more calmly than most people would. I've seen nasty blow-ups. You're trying to stay rational." Rubbing the bridge of his nose, Tyler fought the urge to break down. "Rational," he echoed, voice tinged with defeat. "It feels anything but rational. I'm terrified, Martin. Terrified of losing her, losing everything we've built." Martin placed a reassuring hand on Tyler's shoulder. "Focus on protecting yourself and your company for now. In the meantime, maybe she'll have a change of heart. But if not, you'll be prepared." "Prepared," Tyler repeated, as if the word were foreign. "Right." They exchanged subdued farewells, and Martin left. Tyler collapsed into his desk chair, letting the swirl of anxiety spin in his mind unchecked. He replayed the memory of Vanessa's expression, part seductive, part dismissive when she spoke about her so-called new experiences. He wondered if she'd confided in Bridget all the details of her flirtation with Taylor, or if she was only testing the waters. Half an hour later, he found himself driving home with no real recollection of how he'd navigated the streets. The sun was setting behind the skyline, painting the sky in oranges and pinks that might have been beautiful under different circumstances. But tonight, Tyler barely noticed. When he stepped through his front door, the house was dim and quiet. A note on the kitchen table caught his eye. He flipped on a light, reading Vanessa's handwriting. "Went out for a bit. Don't wait up. V." He inhaled sharply. "Don't wait up." There it was again, those words that stung worse each time. She hadn't bothered to specify where she was going. He glanced at the digital clock above the stove. It was nearly 7. Bridget's brunch is tomorrow, so where is she tonight? A surge of panic rose in him. Could she be with Taylor? His phone sat heavily in his pocket. A voice in his head told him to text her, to call her, to demand answers, but he was too exhausted to fight. Instead, he trudged up the stairs, letting the day's events weigh on his shoulders. In the master bedroom, he caught a glimpse of Vanessa's makeup spread out on her vanity lipstick in a shade of red he hadn't seen her wear in years, a perfume bottle with half the contents gone. She was clearly dressing up for some purpose. Tyler felt the sting of betrayal intensify. Maybe the change in her wasn't so sudden after all. Maybe he'd just been too blind to see it creeping in. He peeled off his tie and sank onto the edge of the bed. Memories cascaded over him like cold rain. Nights they'd spent laughing together, planning their future, raising their son Jackson. He remembered the day he inherited full control of the family business, how Vanessa had been his rock, cheering him on. And now she was slipping away, chasing a lifestyle he didn't understand, a hot wife fantasy that felt more like a nightmare. A single lamp on the bedside table cast a lonely glow, illuminating his reflection in the mirror across the room. He looked older somehow, defeated, hollowed out by fear and heartbreak. The faint hum of the house's heating system underscored the silence. She said it's about us, he thought, bitterness rising, but it feels like it's only about her. The clock ticked relentlessly. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling a loose window frame. He wondered if Vanessa would return soon, or if she'd stay out half the night. The questions had no answers, and it gnawed at him. Eventually, Tyler lay back on the bed, eyes fixed on the ceiling. His phone buzzed once, likely an email or a news alert. He didn't bother checking. He had one foot in the territory of heartbreak and the other planted in the territory of anger. Neither felt stable. His final thought before drifting into a restless half-sleep was a simple, desperate wish. Please let this all be a misunderstanding. Let me wake up tomorrow and realize it's salvageable. Deep down, though, he feared that the storm already gathering would only grow stronger, and the center of that storm was named Vanessa. Tyler stared at his phone, half expecting it to vibrate with news he wasn't ready to hear. The tension that had built since Oscar Jacobs, the investigator, took the job weighed on him like an invisible pressure around his temples. He sat at his large mahogany desk, high up in the corner office of his company's downtown building. Through the wall of windows, he saw Chicago's bustling streets far below, but the spectacular cityscape did nothing to soothe his restlessness. He needed answers, no matter how much they might hurt. A soft knock sounded. Martin poked his head in. "Oscar just emailed me," he announced. "He has something you should see." Tyler's breath caught. "All right," he replied, his pulse quickening. He saved the spreadsheet he'd been pretending to study and followed Martin down the hallway into a small conference room, one they rarely used, tucked beside the HR department. Oscar was already seated at the table, a neutral expression on his face. He held a slim folder in one hand and a tablet in the other. When Tyler entered, the investigator stood to greet him. "Good morning, Mr. Stevens," Oscar said quietly. "I've gathered some preliminary findings from the last couple of days." Tyler swallowed hard and nodded, taking the seat opposite Oscar. Martin settled beside him, bracing for impact. The overhead fluorescent lights buzzed, echoing the hum in Tyler's ears. Oscar opened the folder and slid out a series of photographs. They were relatively small prints, but sharp enough to capture clear details. Tyler picked up the top image and felt his stomach twist. Vanessa emerged from a trendy cafe, smiling alongside Bridget. The next shot showed them in conversation, sipping coffee with intense expressions. The third photo pinned him in place. He could see Taylor in the background, parked across the street. The lens had caught a moment where Vanessa separated from Bridget and walked over to Taylor's car. They arranged a quick meetup after her brunch, Oscar explained, gently tapping the photograph. They drove to a small retail complex about 15 minutes away, each in their own vehicle. Then they left again together in Taylor's car. Tyler set the photo down, his jaw tense. "Go on," he said, voice tight. Oscar took the cue. "I followed them to a quiet back street near the lakeside, almost no traffic on weekdays. They parked and talked for a while. I couldn't record audio from that distance, but there was a distinct intimacy to their body language." "How intimate?" Martin asked, keeping his tone professional. Oscar flipped to the next photo. In it, Taylor leaned across the console, his hand grazing Vanessa's cheek while her eyes were closed. In the corner of the frame, an open container of what looked like takeout coffee sat in the cup holder, nearly forgotten. The gesture between them looked far too comfortable for mere friends. Tyler's heart pounded. He never imagined seeing his wife from the outside looking in like a subject in a tabloid. "That's enough," he murmured, voice strained. "What happened after?" Oscar laid down the final image. They ended up at a small townhouse complex. Possibly a friend's place wasn't Bridget's house, though. They stayed inside for an hour and a half. Vanessa left around noon, returning to her own car. Taylor came out a few minutes later. An uneasy tremor coursed through Tyler's limbs. So it's real, he thought. There was no denying it now. The photos told a story of clandestine meetings, subtle touches, and worlds of possibility he didn't want to imagine. Martin cleared his throat. "Oscar, do we have anything more explicit?" "Not yet," the investigator answered calmly. "But it's early. If they continue this pattern, I'll have further opportunities to document their interactions. Vanessa also attended a small gathering at Bridget's place last night, though that one was more social. I managed to get a few photos." He opened an album on his tablet and turned the screen toward Tyler. "These might be difficult to see." Tyler braced himself as the images came into focus. In the dim lighting of Bridget's living room, people lounged around sipping cocktails. He recognized a few acquaintances, all with a certain air of self-indulgence. Then there was Vanessa, perched on the arm of a sofa. Taylor stood beside her, leaning in, clearly whispering something. The shot captured the moment she turned her face toward him, a half-smile on her lips, as though she reveled in the attention. In the next photo, they were kissing briefly but unmistakably. A swirl of conflicting emotions made Tyler's head spin. Rage, heartbreak, and even a flicker of relief that he finally knew the truth. No more illusions, no more guessing. He pressed his lips together, forcing himself to remain composed. "I see," he said quietly, eyes locked on the damning image. "My wife, kissing that man in front of her friends like it's normal. Like it's not a betrayal." Oscar lowered the tablet. "I'm sorry. I know this is tough." Martin placed a supportive hand on Tyler's shoulder. "You okay?" Tyler managed a slow exhale. "Not really," he admitted. He felt like part of him was hollowing out. The other part wanted to smash something, but he was still Tyler Stevens' CEO, father, man of measured composure. He wouldn't explode, not here. "Thank you for your thoroughness, Oscar," he finally said. Oscar nodded. "I can keep monitoring if you wish. This level of documentation should be enough for legal leverage, but if you need more evidence, I'll gather it." Tyler's gaze dropped to the photos. "We'll see," he murmured. "I need time to process this." Then, glancing at Martin, he added, "But let's also prepare the paperwork. The prenup. I want to have it ready just in case." Martin nodded, a solemn understanding in his eyes. "I'll work on it today." Oscar excused himself, leaving Tyler and Martin alone in the quiet conference room. The harsh fluorescent light made the pictures look even starker. With a trembling hand, Tyler gathered the images and slipped them back into the folder. "Is it enough to end everything?" Tyler asked softly, a rhetorical question more than anything. He felt tears threaten at the corners of his eyes, but he refused to let them fall here. "Tyler," Martin said gently, "that's not for me to decide. But from a legal standpoint, yes, you have substantial grounds if she tries to fight. It might even be wise to confront her with this directly, see if she'll back down." Tyler stared at the photos, remembering how much he loved Vanessa once. Maybe a part of him still did, but it was crushed beneath the weight of her betrayal. "All right," he whispered, swallowing against the ache in his throat. "Let's do what needs to be done." Nightfall draped the city in glimmering lights, and Tyler found himself sitting in his parked SUV outside a suburban home belonging to Bridget Caldwell. He had arrived on a sudden impulse, spurred by the knowledge that Vanessa was somewhere in that house. It was the same place he'd just seen in Oscar's photos. He flicked off the ignition but didn't step out. Instead, he clenched the steering wheel, wrestling with whether barging in unannounced was a terrible idea. The sound of distant laughter filtered through open windows on the second floor, likely more of Bridget's bohemian-themed get-togethers. Gathering courage, Tyler finally left the SUV and approached the front door. Low music thumped from inside. When he rang the doorbell, a hush fell, and the door opened to reveal a woman with short platinum hair and dramatic eye makeup. Bridget. She tilted her head, lips curving into a wry smile. Well, well, Tyler Stevens. What brings you here? His jaw flexed. I need to speak with Vanessa. Bridget rolled her eyes. Sweetheart, it's a small get-together. Are you sure you want to crash the party? He forced a tight smile. I wouldn't be here if I had a choice. With a theatrical sigh, Bridget stepped aside. The living room was spacious, decorated with an eclectic mix of modern art and neon lighting. A handful of people lounged on velvet couches, sipping martinis and chatting over subdued techno music. In a far corner, Taylor stood with his back to the door, swirling a whiskey glass. Vanessa was right beside him, leaning in as they talked. Tyler's heart thudded. She's not even trying to hide it. Bridget closed the door, turning to Tyler with a smirk. Try not to cause a scene, she teased, patting his shoulder. We wouldn't want anything messy. She walked off, leaving him standing there awkwardly. Vanessa noticed him then, her eyes flicking with a mixture of surprise and annoyance. Taylor followed her gaze, lips curving into an almost taunting grin. Tyler strode forward, ignoring the curious stares from the other guests. Tyler? Vanessa said, stepping away from Taylor. Why are you here? He tried to keep his voice steady. Because I'm done getting second-hand reports about you meeting Taylor in secret. I'm done watching from the sidelines. Her cheeks flushed. We're not doing anything wrong, she insisted, though her tone lacked conviction. Taylor sipped his drink, giving Tyler a slow, condescending nod. Hey, man, we're just enjoying the evening. Tyler's blood simmered. Don't hey man me, my wife. He stopped himself, inhaling a shaky breath. Vanessa, can we talk alone? She glanced at Taylor, uncertainty flickering in her eyes. Bridget sauntered over, apparently drawn by the tension. Relax, big guy, Bridget said, crossing her arms. This is an open-minded space, no judgments. Tyler turned to her, bitterness twisting his gut. I see how open-minded it is. He then fixed his gaze on Vanessa. Are you coming or not? Vanessa frowned, annoyance creeping into her features. Fine, she said, handing her half-finished wine glass to Taylor. Give me 5 minutes, guys. She gestured for Tyler to follow her into a side hallway, away from the main group. The hallway was dim, illuminated by a single floor lamp. Framed abstract art lined the walls, the swirl of colors somehow adding to Tyler's disorientation. Vanessa crossed her arms, leaning back against the wall. What is this about? She demanded. He stared at her face, beautiful, yes, but distant. I've seen the pictures, he said bluntly. You and Taylor, kissing, meeting up at that townhouse. Do you really expect me to just accept that? She bristled, flicking her hair over one shoulder. Pictures? So you're having me followed? A note of outrage crept into her voice. His chest constricted. You gave me no choice. You vanish for hours, come home late, openly flirt with this guy. He swallowed, struggling to keep his composure. We've been married for 23 years, Vanessa. Are you really going to claim this is harmless? She looked away, guilt warring with defiance. I'm not trying to destroy us, Tyler. I'm searching for something different. Her voice dropped, a tremor betraying her frustration. I'm sorry you're hurt, but you can't keep me locked in a cage. Locked in a cage? He repeated, disbelieving. I gave you everything, freedom, security, but you crossed a line. Only because you refused to explore anything outside your comfort zone, she shot back, eyes flashing. You're so stuck in your corporate routine, your conventional ideas. This spark with Taylor, maybe it's reckless, but it reminds me I'm alive. Silence choked the air. Tyler felt a wave of exhaustion. He pictured the sweet, warm woman he'd asked to marry him decades ago, comparing that memory to the sharp-edged person before him now. So you'd rather blow up our marriage than try counseling or even an honest conversation? She stared at the floor, arms tightening around her torso. I'm not blowing it up. She hesitated, tears forming in her eyes before she blinked them away. I just can't go back to the monotony. I need more excitement. His voice hardened. Then at least have the decency to own the consequences, because this sure as hell isn't a small fling anymore. People are talking, Vanessa. People see you two kissing at parties. Her eyes widened with a blend of fear and anger. You'd shame me like that? He shook his head. I don't need to do anything. Your actions speak for themselves. Then he pointed toward the living room. Taylor, Bridget, whoever else is out there encouraging you, none of them have to live with the fallout. I do. A beat passed, tension vibrating in the narrow space. Finally, Vanessa inhaled, drawing herself up. I'm sorry you're upset, but I'm not turning back. If you won't join me in this new experience, then you can either stand aside or let me go. He clenched his fists, nails digging into his palms. She's pushing me away, he realized. Part of him wanted to shout, to plead with her to stop, but the cold determination on her face told him it was useless. Fine, he managed, voice shaking with contained emotion. Don't say I didn't warn you when everything else unravels. She bit her lip, possibly on the verge of tears. But then her phone buzzed in her pocket and she glanced at it as if it offered a welcome distraction. I need to get back, she muttered, turning away. I'll see you at home. And with that, she walked off, leaving Tyler alone in the dim corridor. Faint strains of music and laughter spilled through the walls, mocking him. After a few moments, he headed for the front door, ignoring the curious looks from the other guests as he passed by. Bridget raised an eyebrow but didn't speak. Outside, the cool night air washed over him. His heart felt as if it were beating out of rhythm. He stared up at the suburban sky, a few pale stars peeking through city glow. Monotony, she'd called it. For Tyler, it was stability, love, partnership things he assumed she cherished. Now it felt like she'd thrown them all to the wind. With a heavy heart, he drove away from Bridget's house, the knowledge that the next steps would be even more painful, pulsing like a bruise. The living room lights were still on when Tyler returned home late that night. A wave of reluctance washed over him, yet he forced himself through the door. The air smelled faintly of lavender from the diffuser Vanessa liked oddly comforting, yet tinged with heartbreak. He found her seated on the couch, browsing something on her phone. The tension in her posture told him she expected another confrontation. You're back, she said quietly, not looking up. He dropped his keys on the coffee table, noticing that her phone screen displayed a web page about open marriages. His chest tightened. Yeah, he replied, sinking into the armchair across from her. We need to talk. She let out a shaky breath, setting her phone aside. Go ahead. For a moment, he just stared at her, hoping to find some sign of regret in her eyes. Instead, he found only a weariness that mirrored his own. I have proof, he finally said, voice hollow. Pictures of you and Taylor, enough to take legal action if it comes to that. Her shoulders stiffened. I can't believe you're threatening me with evidence, Tyler, she snapped. Is that how low we've sunk? He rubbed his temples in frustration. You're the one sneaking around kissing another man like it's no big deal. What do you expect me to do? Pretend it never happened? She stood, the silk robe she wore swirling around her legs. It was just a kiss. You're acting like I burned the house down. He shook his head, heart pounding. And the other times you two snuck away? The townhouse? The hush-hush meetups? Am I supposed to believe nothing else happened? She clenched her jaw. You're so provincial. Why can't you see that we can expand our marriage without destroying it? Expand? The word tasted bitter on his tongue. I guess you think you can still keep me, keep the house, keep our life, while you date that guy on the side? A flicker of guilt crossed her face before she steeled herself. And what if I can? She dared. We'd both get our needs met. You wouldn't have to do anything different. He stared at her, genuinely shocked by how brazen she sounded. He realized a part of her truly believed in this twisted logic. Vanessa, he said, voice raw, this is insane. You're humiliating me. What about respect? What about loyalty? She inhaled sharply. It's not about disrespect. It's about me having freedom to explore. And if you weren't so uptight, maybe you'd find it thrilling too. A red haze of anger clouded his vision. Stop, he growled, fists clenching. Just stop. I'm not going to stand by while you toss our vows in the trash. Either you back away from Taylor or you face real consequences. She squared her shoulders, tears shimmering in her eyes. Are you threatening to divorce me? He swallowed hard, the words choking him. I don't want it to come to that, but yes, I can't stay in this marriage if you continue down that road. Silence crackled in the air. Her lips quivered, and for an instant she looked truly vulnerable. But then her expression hardened. Fine, she whispered, voice trembling with an odd mix of fear and defiance. If you want to talk about divorce, let's talk. But don't blame me for wanting excitement. Tyler exhaled a long, unsteady breath. Excitement? You're willing to gamble everything for a cheap thrill with a man you barely know? She flinched as if struck. Don't you dare call this cheap, she snapped. You have no idea how suffocated I've felt these last few years living by your schedules, your corporate duties, your plans. Maybe I need to feel alive again. And Taylor... Her voice broke slightly. Taylor shows me possibilities. His heart twisted. He remembered the earlier years of their marriage, how supportive she'd been when he took over the family company. He'd assumed they were forging a future together. Now it felt like she blamed him for her dissatisfaction. Well, he managed, if you think you'll find meaning in that man's arms, go ahead, but you'll lose me. She stared at him, breathing shakily. So be it, she murmured. I can't apologize for wanting more. Tears hovered, but she blinked them away, chin raised in an almost defiant posture. He sank back into the armchair, feeling a wave of weary despair. The woman he loved had somehow turned into a stranger, fighting for a dream he couldn't understand. All right, he said softly. If that's how you feel, I'm done talking. For a fleeting moment, her facade cracked and pain slipped through. She opened her mouth as if to speak, then closed it, turning away. Gathering her phone and robe around her, she disappeared upstairs, leaving Tyler in the dim glow of the living room lamp. He closed his eyes, exhaling shakily. His marriage was on the edge of a cliff, and it seemed Vanessa had just kicked it closer to the drop. I won't let her drag me through the mud, he whispered, voice echoing in the silence. I have to protect myself even if it breaks my heart. 2 days passed in a haze of brittle civility. Tyler and Vanessa barely spoke, exchanging only the barest necessities about groceries, bills, or the thermostat setting. Tension was a permanent fixture in the house, pressing down like an anvil on both of them. Late one evening, Tyler was reviewing financial documents in his home office when Vanessa's voice broke the silence. Tyler, she called from the doorway, can we talk? He looked up, bracing himself. Yeah, he said, pushing aside the papers. Come in. She stepped inside, wearing jeans and a light sweater, hair pulled back in a ponytail. I've made up my mind, she said quietly, crossing her arms. Next weekend, I'm meeting Taylor at the Grand Lucerne Hotel for the night. I want you there. He felt a flash of anger. You what? She took a shaky breath. I want you to see it. Then you'll understand it's not dirty. It's about a new experience. I want you to watch, to realize I still love you, that it's not a betrayal. We can record it. Her cheeks flamed with a mix of embarrassment and determination. I know how it sounds, but if you see me with him, maybe you'll learn to accept it. His heart pounded, a wave of disgust mingling with heartbreak. Vanessa, he said, voice sharp, this is beyond insane. You're telling me to stand by while you cheat on me in some fancy hotel room, and you want me to learn to accept it? Her voice trembled. It's not cheating if you willingly watch. It's called an open arrangement. I read about it in... He cut her off, a bitter laugh escaping him. In that ridiculous magazine, right? Hot Wife Lifestyle? Let me guess, Bridget encourages this too. She looked away. Yes, she does. She's seen couples do it successfully. Tyler clenched his jaw, a swirl of anger filling his chest. And if I refuse? Vanessa squared her shoulders. Then you'll never understand, and I'll do it anyway. A tense silence stretched. He realized with grim certainty that she meant every word. She was prepared to push him to the brink. If you go through with this, he said finally, I'll have all the evidence I need. Adultery caught in real time. Her chin quivered, but she didn't back down. I know. But if you truly love me, you'll at least come see for yourself. Maybe you'll realize it can be thrilling for both of us. His mind reeled at the thought. Thrilling? This was heartbreak, betrayal, a spectacle. Yet he couldn't deny the logic. If she set foot in that hotel with Taylor, it would be the final nail in the coffin of their marriage. And ironically, it would also be the ironclad proof he needed for divorce. He shut his eyes, a dull ache spreading across his forehead. "Vanessa, you're forcing my hand. You realize that, right?" She swallowed, nodding. "Yes, but I'm done living in fear of what other people think. This is about me. And if you can't accept that, then—" Her voice cracked. "Then we're done." He opened his eyes, meeting her gaze. He saw both determination and sorrow swirling there, an odd mixture that reflected how broken their relationship had become. "Fine," he said, voice hoarse. "Book your damned hotel room. I'll show up if only to confirm what I already know." A flicker of relief passed over her face. "Thank you," she whispered, though her gratitude felt twisted. "It's next Saturday. I'll text you the details." Without waiting for a response, she turned and left, the faint echo of her footsteps heading upstairs. Tyler remained in the office, leaning forward in his chair, elbows on the desk. His mind churned, thinking of the hidden camera he could set up, the legal documents Martin would prepare, the inevitability of heartbreak. She's truly lost, he thought, swallowing back a surge of bitterness. Reaching into a drawer, he pulled out a worn photo from years ago, Vanessa beaming on their honeymoon, standing at the edge of a crystal blue lagoon. Her grin back then had been so bright, so full of genuine love. Now it felt like a relic from a different era. He placed the photo face down, shutting the drawer with a trembling hand. "I have to protect myself," he reminded himself. She made her choice. Despite the crushing sadness, he steeled his resolve. The next weekend would mark the point of no return. And so he murmured to the silent room, "This is the only way." Tyler's heart pounded like a slow drum beat as he stepped into the lavish suite at the Grand Lucerne Hotel. Crystal chandeliers reflected tiny rainbows across the marble floor, and a gilded mirror on the far wall caught his uneasy reflection, brow creased, eyes heavy with dread. He'd never expected to be in a place like this for a reason so twisted. Vanessa stood near the window, wearing a sleek black cocktail dress that hugged her figure. She seemed engrossed in the golden skyline beyond the glass city lights shimmering against a dusky sky. Soft music played from hidden speakers, giving the suite a warm, almost romantic backdrop. Yet the tension hanging in the air was thick as fog. Tyler quietly closed the door behind him, the latch clicking into place like a fateful seal. He could smell a faint hint of vanilla from the candles flickering on a table by the bed. The sight of that bed made his chest ache. It was elegantly turned down, pillows adorned with embroidered covers, reminding him of everything that was about to happen. He cleared his throat. "You wanted me here," he said, voice low. "I'm here." Vanessa turned, eyes glistening with a mixture of anticipation and guilt. The overhead light caught subtle highlights in her chestnut hair. "I appreciate it," she murmured, fiddling with the bracelet on her wrist. "I know this isn't easy for you." He swallowed, trying to steady the whirlwind in his mind. "No, it isn't." His gaze drifted to a bucket of ice chilling a bottle of champagne. "You've really set the stage, haven't you?" She managed a tight smile. "Taylor's on his way up. He texted from the lobby. I told him I wanted a moment alone with you first." Tyler exhaled, stepping closer. The plush carpeting muffled his footsteps. The room smelled of roses. Vanessa must have ordered a bouquet that now sat on the glass coffee table, bright red petals vibrant against the neutral decor. "Say what you need to say," he told her. She hesitated, her posture tense. "Tyler," she began softly, "this is about me exploring a part of myself I've ignored for too long. I am hoping you'll stay, that you'll watch and see it's not about hurting you." He clenched his fists at his sides, nails digging into his palms. "You think me watching would somehow make it less of a betrayal?" he asked, voice trembling with restrained anger. "You're crossing lines I never thought we'd even discuss, let alone do." She bowed her head, eyes gleaming with regret. "I don't want to destroy what we have. I just want—" Her words caught in her throat. "I want more. More than the routine at home. More than polite dinners at the country club." He scoffed, bitterness creeping into his tone. "So your answer is to bring me here, to show off your affair? Or is it an affair if you're parading it in front of me?" Vanessa shut her eyes briefly. It's not an affair if we're open about it, she insisted, though her voice wavered with uncertainty. I know it's unconventional, but that's the point. Tyler turned away, his gaze sweeping over the meticulously arranged room. Candles, champagne, rose petals, an aura of romance twisted into something else. If only this was for us, he thought. If only it were a reconnection instead of a final blow. A knock on the door shattered the fragile moment. Vanessa visibly tensed, then crossed to the door. Tyler's breath caught as she opened it to reveal Taylor standing there in a dark, tailored suit. The man wore that same confident smirk Tyler had seen before. It made Tyler's stomach clench. Hey, Taylor said, stepping in with a casual grace that unsettled Tyler. Vanessa, he greeted her, then tipped his chin at Tyler. Tyler. Tyler forced himself to nod, throat tight. Taylor, he replied curtly, not trusting himself to say more. He could smell the man's expensive cologne, something musky and bold that felt like it was encroaching on Tyler's personal space. Vanessa gestured around, voice wavering between polite and tense. Make yourself comfortable, she said to Taylor, as if they were hosting a cordial gathering. Then her eyes flicked to Tyler, silently begging him not to escalate the tension. A painful silence stretched. Taylor placed his phone on a side table, glancing at the chilled champagne. Shall we pour a glass? He asked lightly, looking at Vanessa. She offered a thin, shaky smile, nodding. Yes, sure. Tyler watched, stomach twisting, as Taylor popped the champagne cork with a muffled whoosh. Tiny bubbles foamed into crystal flutes. What kind of twisted reality is this? Tyler wondered, feeling like he'd stepped onto the set of a bizarre film. The flicker of camera equipment near the dresser, Vanessa's idea to record everything, only made it worse. He glanced at the small device propped up on a tripod, a red light glowing near the lens. Right, he thought bitterly. She wanted it recorded. Proof, perhaps? Or maybe something else. The entire situation felt surreal, as if he were outside himself, watching the downfall of his marriage in real time. Vanessa took a flute from Taylor, handing another to Tyler. Here, she said quietly, as though this gesture might soften the blow. He accepted it, though his hand trembled slightly. The effervescent hiss of champagne sounded like static in his ears. He took a sip, the taste turning to acid on his tongue. Taylor cleared his throat, breaking the uneasy silence. Tyler, he said, his tone carefully casual, I know this arrangement is unusual, but Vanessa believes it can lead to a deeper connection for all of us. He paused, glancing at her. I just want to be sure we're all on the same page. Tyler's pulse pounded, anger surged, but he fought to keep it contained. Deeper connection? He repeated, forcing a hollow laugh. I'm not sure how you define that, but I see this as the point of no return. An uncomfortable flush colored Taylor's cheeks, but he shrugged. I'm not here to cause trouble, just giving Vanessa what she wants. That's exactly the trouble, Tyler muttered under his breath, setting his champagne down with a clink. He could barely stand to look at them anymore. Vanessa gently laid her hand on Tyler's shoulder, her touch warm but meaningless now. Look, she said, voice tight. I just want you to see it doesn't have to be ugly. You can be present. We can remain honest. Tyler closed his eyes, the pain nearly unbearable. Do what you came here to do, he managed, swallowing back tears of both rage and sorrow. Let's get it over with. Because every second of stalling felt like death by 1,000 cuts. Vanessa hesitated, her eyes darting between Tyler and Taylor. She slid her hand away, moving closer to Taylor. Tyler stepped back, heart hammering. The flickering candlelight cast shadows on the walls, shapes shifting like a dark dance. A disembodied voice inside Tyler's mind whispered, Run. Don't let yourself witness this. But he stayed, because some part of him needed to witness her final betrayal, to confirm that the vow they made so many years ago truly lay in ashes. Vanessa brushed her hair aside, lips trembling as she turned toward Taylor. The hush in the room felt suffocating, a vacuum that swallowed Tyler's every breath. He sank into a plush armchair by the corner, gripping the arms so hard his knuckles turned white. A storm of emotions raged inside him, anger, heartbreak, even a flicker of morbid fascination, like watching a car crash you can't look away from. The soft music looped in the background, a gentle piano melody that seemed cruelly out of place. Vanessa set her champagne down, meeting Taylor's gaze. Tyler felt each passing second amplify the tension. The camera's tiny red light glowed in the dimness. With measured slowness, Taylor reached for Vanessa's waist, pulling her closer. She exhaled shakily, shooting Tyler one last uneasy glance before her attention returned to Taylor. This is it, Tyler thought, his heartbeat thudding in his ears. She's choosing him. Right in front of me. The first kiss was tentative, like they were testing the air between them. Vanessa closed her eyes, her hands coming up to rest on Taylor's shoulders. Tyler felt like his heart might tear in half. He glanced away, guilt and revulsion clashing. But the faint rustling of clothes and the echo of their muted whispers tugged at his attention, forcing him to confront the ugly reality. "Stop this, say something," a voice in his head screamed. But he couldn't. His body was frozen, locked in place by the knowledge that if he rose, if he demanded they stop, she might just laugh at him or brush him aside. So he endured the humiliating spectacle, each second feeling like an eternity. Vanessa's breathing grew ragged. Her hair fell forward and she tilted her head, deepening the kiss. Tyler tried to breathe through the stabbing pain in his chest. He looked anywhere but at them, staring at the plush carpet, the flickering candle flames, the swirling designs on the wallpaper. A moment later, he risked a glance. That was a mistake. Taylor's hand slid along Vanessa's back, drawing her even closer. She turned her head slightly, throwing Tyler a sidelong look. For an instant, her eyes glinted with something akin to challenge, as though asking if he'd intervene. Then her lids fluttered shut, immersing herself in the moment. Tyler's vision blurred with tears he refused to shed. He set the glass down so he wouldn't shatter it. "I can't do this," he thought. "I can't watch my wife, but watch he did." Because a morbid sense of closure compelled him to stay. He felt raw, as if every nerve had been stripped bare. Time slowed, the only sounds a muffled hum of the city below and the faint moan slipping from Vanessa's lips. Finally, the emotional agony became too much. Tyler rose shakily from the armchair. Neither Vanessa nor Taylor seemed to notice at first. He walked to the dresser, where a plain envelope lay ready, 2 copies of the divorce paperwork sealed inside. On top of it sat Vanessa's wedding ring, which she'd removed earlier, claiming she didn't want it to get in the way of the night's experience. His heart clenched at the sight of that ring, once a symbol of love and loyalty. Now it felt like a cheap trinket. Fine, he thought, picking it up. She doesn't want it. She doesn't deserve it. He moved to the bedside table, carefully placing the envelope next to a small lamp. Then, with trembling fingers, he set the ring on top of it. Let that be her final memory of me here, he thought grimly. She could read the papers after her fun ended. From behind, he heard a soft gasp, Vanessa's or Taylor's. He couldn't tell. The blood roared in his ears. He needed to leave before his anger ignited into something uncontrollable. He grabbed his phone from his jacket pocket, snapping 2 quick pictures of the scene from behind, just enough proof to leave no doubt about what happened tonight. He pressed his lips together, tears burning. If there had been any chance of repairing this marriage, it died the moment Vanessa gave herself to another man in front of him. Now, there was only a cold finality in his heart. Drawing a deep breath, Tyler turned toward the door. His steps were heavy on the thick carpet, and he paused just long enough to look back. Through the haze of candlelight, he saw Vanessa's eyes flutter open, noticing him at the threshold. For the briefest second, regret flashed across her face. Then she closed her eyes again, returning to the man she'd chosen. Tyler clenched his jaw, stepping into the hallway. The hotel corridor seemed too bright, too pristine. Behind him, the door clicked shut with the finality of a slammed coffin. Chicago's streets were strangely empty this late, though the towering lights still crowned the skyline. Tyler drove with trembling hands, flicking on the radio just to fill the silence. But the soft jazz that drifted from the speakers did nothing to calm the storm inside his chest. What have I done? What has she done? What now? He pulled into the parking garage beneath his corporate building. An odd choice for this hour, but he needed somewhere private to gather himself before facing Martin. Slamming the car door harder than necessary, he paced across the concrete floor. His mind replayed Vanessa's betrayal in graphic detail, hammering at him like a relentless migraine. After a moment of battling, spiraling thoughts, he forced himself to climb into the elevator. The office corridors were eerily still, half the overhead lights dimmed for nighttime. Everything felt surreal, as though he'd stepped into a parallel universe where his life had collapsed in just a few hours. Martin was waiting in his corner office, a desk lamp casting long shadows on the walls. He'd obviously come straight from home. His tie was loose, hair slightly disheveled. Concern etched his features the moment Tyler entered. "Tyler?" Martin's voice was grave. "What happened?" Tyler dropped heavily into the chair across from Martin's desk, exhaling shakily. "She went through with it," he said, voice tight. "Brought me along, wanted me to witness it." He paused, swallowing hard. "I recorded enough. Took pictures. It's real, Martin. It's all real." A flicker of anger and pity crossed Martin's face. "I'm sorry," he murmured. "That must have been hell." Tyler nodded, throat constricting. "I have the USB from the small camera I planted, plus a couple phone shots from tonight. More than enough to prove everything." He patted his inside jacket pocket, retrieving the device with shaking hands. "I want a file. Right now." Martin took the USB, setting it gently on his desk. "I'll get the ball rolling on the paperwork. We can finalize the filing first thing in the morning, given you've already prepared the prenup documents." His voice softened. "Are you sure there's no turning back?" Tyler shut his eyes, a tear slipping free before he wiped it away. "I watched her, Martin. She—" His voice choked up for a moment. "There's no coming back from this. She made her choice." Martin nodded solemnly. "Then let's finalize it." He rifled through his drawer, pulling out a thick stack of paperwork. "Sign here, here, and here," he said quietly. "I'll handle the rest. The prenup is clear. With proof of adultery, your assets remain yours." Tyler's pen hovered over the line. He inhaled, trying to steady his trembling. So this is how 23 years ends. Then, with grim resolve, he scrawled his signature across the pages. After the last flourish of ink, he set the pen down, feeling more hollow than he ever thought possible. Martin cleared his throat. "We'll serve her the documents. Considering the video evidence, it should be straightforward. Are you going home?" Tyler's gaze flicked to the window, where the city's neon glow shimmered. "Home doesn't feel like home anymore." He paused, hands clenched in his lap. "But I'll figure it out. Might stay in a hotel tonight. Just can't face that house." Martin rose, circling the desk to put a reassuring hand on Tyler's shoulder. "I wish there was more I could do." Tyler forced a half smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You've done enough by standing by me." He rose to his feet, slipping the phone back into his pocket. "I'll drop off anything else you need tomorrow. Let's just get this over with." They exchanged a somber nod. Tyler left the office, the building's silent halls echoing with his footsteps. Somehow it felt fitting to file for divorce in the dead of night, a reflection of the darkness that had consumed his marriage. Sunlight peeked over the horizon, painting the clouds a delicate pink. Vanessa stirred in the rumpled hotel bed, blinking groggily at the unfamiliar surroundings. A dull ache throbbed at her temples, the aftermath of too much champagne, perhaps, or the weight of what she'd done. She pushed a strand of hair from her face, noticing Taylor was already up, pulling on his shirt near the window. "Morning," he said curtly, not meeting her eyes. His usual confidence seemed tarnished, overshadowed by an awkwardness that settled between them like a heavy curtain. Vanessa sat up, suddenly very aware of her disheveled state. "Morning," she echoed. The suite felt different now, the candles extinguished, the once romantic lighting replaced by harsh daylight. She glanced at the dresser, remembering Tyler's presence last night. Her stomach twisted. Where is he? She scanned the room, her heart dropping when she saw no sign of him. Confusion gave way to a creeping dread. "Tyler?" she said under her breath, eyes darting to the table. That's when she spotted it, a solitary envelope on the bedside stand with her wedding ring lying on top. Her pulse quickened. She snatched the envelope, noticing the crisp edges that looked chillingly official. The first page was a simple note in Tyler's handwriting. Vanessa, you made your choice. Here are the consequences. Beneath it, legal documents thick with typed clauses. Divorce papers. No, she whispered, voice cracking. Her fingers trembled as she flipped through the pages, realization dawning. She felt as if the floor had been yanked out from under her. He actually left, she stammered, her eyes welling with tears. Taylor cleared his throat, stepping closer, but his touch on her shoulder felt uneasy. Vanessa, I'm sorry. I didn't think it would come to this so soon. She let out a shaky breath, tears spilling down her cheeks. I thought he'd at least stay and talk. Why did he just... Her voice broke. She never truly believed Tyler would walk away, not after all these years. She thought her marriage was invincible enough to survive her experiment. But now she realized how fragile it had been. A frantic thought struck her money. In a burst of panic, she reached for her phone, opening her banking app. Her worst fears were confirmed. The joint account was locked, credit cards disconnected. She had her personal account, but it held only a fraction of the wealth she was used to. He's cut me off, she thought, a wave of desperation crashing over her. She dialed Tyler's number, tears blurring her vision. It went straight to voicemail. She tried again, voice shaking. Tyler, please pick up. We need to talk. No answer. She sent a flurry of texts. I'm sorry, let's fix this, please. Each message returned unread, like hurling pleas into a void. Taylor watched uncomfortably, rubbing the back of his neck. Look, Vanessa, I need to go. This is way more complicated than I expected. He grabbed his jacket, avoiding her gaze. We'll talk later, okay? She opened her mouth to protest, but the words died on her lips. The door clicked shut behind Taylor. In the sudden quiet, she realized how alone she was. The divorce papers sat on the bed, her ring glinting mockingly in the early morning light. A sob burst from her, ragged and choking. I've lost everything, she thought, clutching the papers. She recalled how Tyler used to hold her close on lazy Sunday mornings, how they shared 1,000 small jokes only they understood. Now, that life lay in ruins at her feet. Her phone buzzed. Bridget's name flashed on the screen. With trembling fingers, Vanessa answered. Vanessa? Bridget's voice was urgent. What's going on? I got your text. Are you serious about this divorce? Vanessa pressed the phone to her ear, tears streaking down her cheeks. Yes, she sobbed. He's left me, Bridget. He locked me out of our accounts. I don't know what to do. Her voice broke. A pause crackled on the line. We'll figure something out, Bridget said, her tone brisk. You need to find a lawyer, someone who can challenge that prenup. Don't panic. But panic was all Vanessa felt. She realized the hot wife fantasy she had chased, instigated by stories from Bridget, spurred on by her own restlessness, had obliterated her marriage. Now she stood in an upscale hotel suite, heartbreak carving her insides hollow. Find a lawyer, Bridget repeated. Fight it. Don't let him walk all over you. Vanessa nodded numbly, even though Bridget couldn't see her. Okay, she whispered, wiping tears with the back of her hand. Fight? For what? The man she humiliated? The money she took for granted? She wasn't sure. When the call ended, Vanessa sank onto the bed, divorce papers fanned out around her like the shards of a broken dream. Outside the window, the city thrived in the morning sun, oblivious to her private catastrophe. She held the wedding ring in her palm. Was it worth it? That question clawed at her mind. Deep down, she suspected she already knew the answer. Tyler sat in the ornate hallway of the family courthouse, his knees tense, hands clasped together. The polished marble floors reflected the swirl of lawyers and litigants hurrying past, all navigating their own legal mazes. He exhaled a shaky breath, recalling how, just weeks ago, his greatest concern had been the next board meeting, or whether Vanessa wanted to redecorate the living room. Now, the stakes felt infinitely higher. Martin approached, gripping a thick file of documents. Everything's in order, he said, his voice low and steady. Spencer, Vanessa's attorney, will try to argue you gave implicit permission for her lifestyle. But we have the recordings, the statements, The prenup. He studied Tyler's anxious expression. You ready? Tyler nodded, though his heart felt like it was pounding against a locked door. As ready as I'll ever be, he murmured. A small part of him still reeled from the notion that his marriage of 23 years was about to be dissected under legal scrutiny. But he tightened his jaw, remembering the bitter final images in that hotel room. They entered the courtroom, a modest space lined with wooden benches and a raised dais for the judge. The overhead lights gave the room a sharp clarity, leaving no place for illusions. Vanessa was already seated at one of the tables, her lawyer, Spencer, whispering something into her ear. She looked tense, her eyes darting toward Tyler with a flash of regret. For a moment, he almost thought she might meet his gaze, maybe even mouth an apology. Instead, she stared back down at her neatly folded hands. Martin and Tyler took their places at the plaintiff's table. The judge, a stoic woman in her late 50s, entered, gavel tapping lightly. Court is now in session, the bailiff announced. The hum of anxiety in the room turned silent as the judge surveyed them, her expression even and impartial. Spencer rose, adjusting his impeccable suit jacket. He launched into a calm yet pointed argument, stating Vanessa's position, that Tyler had consented, at least tacitly, to her extramarital relationships. He tried to paint a picture of a modern arrangement, implying Tyler only objected afterward for financial gain. The claim made Tyler's stomach twist in anger. When Martin took his turn, his tone was controlled but firm. Your Honor, the prenuptial agreement is very clear regarding infidelity. My client repeatedly refused these so-called open arrangements. Our evidence includes text messages, video recordings, and sworn statements showing Mr. Stevens' explicit disapproval. Vanessa's actions were never condoned, they were forced upon him. The judge's gaze flicked from Martin to Spencer, then to Vanessa and Tyler. Show me the evidence, she ordered, her voice calm but commanding. Martin handed over a slim folder. It contained printed stills from the hotel footage screen captures that left no doubt about the nature of Vanessa's actions. Tyler forced himself not to look at them, but the judge leafed through the images with professional detachment. She also skimmed transcripts of text messages, each confirming that Tyler had protested, that he'd begged her to stop. Spencer tried to interject. Your Honor, we believe these texts were incomplete. There could have been further context, Martin countered by offering phone logs and witness statements from Oscar. The investigator's report confirms Vanessa met with another man for extended periods, in defiance of Mr. Stevens' known objections, Martin said, voice tight. The judge's expression remained neutral, but Tyler glimpsed a flicker of disapproval in her eyes. She turned to Vanessa. Mrs. Stevens, do you have anything to say before I make my decision regarding the prenup's validity? Vanessa's gaze flickered with desperation. She stood, fingers trembling on the edge of the table. I never intended for our marriage to end like this, she said softly, voice catching. I thought we could try something new, something that couples do to spice things up. I genuinely believed Tyler would come around. I didn't expect him to... She stopped, pressing her lips together. I'm sorry, she finished in a whisper, though it sounded too late and too practiced. Spencer stepped forward, attempting to reframe Vanessa's words as a misguided but honest mistake. Yet the judge raised a hand to silence him, her gaze returning to the documents in front of her. She took a deliberate moment before speaking. I've reviewed the evidence thoroughly, and it's quite clear Mr. Stevens did not consent to this arrangement, the judge said, her voice cool. The prenuptial agreement stands. Mrs. Stevens, I'm afraid you are entitled only to the financial sum dictated by that contract, no more. She exhaled, tapping the folder once with a pen. The divorce is granted, effective immediately. Vanessa's shoulders slumped as though someone had cut her strings. A quiet sob escaped her lips, and she hid her face behind one hand. Spencer placed a comforting grip on her arm, but he looked resigned, like he'd known the outcome was inevitable. Tyler felt a strange mixture of relief and sorrow wash over him. He stared at his former wife, wanting to feel anger or triumph, but instead, he felt an aching emptiness. This was the final chapter of a love story he once believed would last forever. Martin clapped Tyler's shoulder. Let's go, he whispered. Tyler nodded. standing to leave the courtroom behind. No victory speech. No gloating, just the subtle understanding that he was now free from the betrayal that had shattered his life. The roar of airplane engines thundered in Tyler's ears as he stepped off the small, private jet onto the tarmac in Costa Rica. A rush of tropical heat and ocean-scented air enveloped him, so different from Chicago's crisp autumn chill. He drew in a long breath, hoping it might wash away the lingering memories of the trial. The look on Vanessa's face when the gavel fell. A driver from the local transportation service lifted Tyler's suitcases into a sleek SUV. The vehicle sped away from the airport, weaving through winding roads framed by lush greenery and glimpses of turquoise coastline. Tyler gazed out the window, his mind drifting between exhaustion and curiosity at this new beginning. An hour later, the SUV pulled up to a villa perched near a secluded beach, a property Tyler had purchased months ago as part of a distant retirement dream. Now it felt like his refuge from a life he no longer recognized. White stucco walls contrasted with terracotta roof tiles, and tall palm trees swayed around the villa's edges. The murmur of ocean waves rose from beyond the backyard fence. Tyler climbed out of the SUV, tipping the driver and murmuring thanks in broken Spanish. Once alone, he stood before the villa's double doors, heart pounding in a mix of relief and nervousness. He was here to start over, but what did that even look like? Inside, the villa smelled faintly of salt and newly polished floors. Tall windows framed a breathtaking view of the ocean, where soft afternoon sunlight danced on the water's surface. A swirl of emotions flooded Tyler: grief, hope, and something in between. At least here I can breathe, he thought. He wandered from room to room, each space uncluttered and neutral, waiting for him to shape a new life. The master bedroom faced the sea, its balcony doors wide open to let in the warm breeze. He set down his suitcases, catching his reflection in a large mirror. Dark circles under his eyes betrayed weeks of turmoil, but there was also a resolve in his posture. The divorce papers were signed, stamped, and filed. He was free in every legal sense, though the scars still ached. That evening he meandered out to the beach, sand squishing between his toes. A lazy hush of waves caressed the shore, the horizon blushing orange and pink as the sun dipped low. Tyler sank onto a patch of damp sand, letting the ocean's timeless rhythm lull his frantic thoughts. What now? He wondered. What do I do with this blank slate? His mind circled back to the brief conversation he'd had with Martin, who'd encouraged him to take his time, heal, explore. It felt odd being encouraged to rest when all he knew was work and obligations. Yet the quiet hush of the tide reminded him there was more to life than board meetings and heartbreak. The beach was empty except for a lone figure tending a small cluster of potted flowers on the property next door. Tyler squinted through the dim light. She wore a breezy sundress that moved gently with the ocean breeze, and her dark hair cascaded down her back. A widow, he vaguely recalled from the property records, a neighbor named Scarlett. She hadn't noticed him yet, completely absorbed in plucking wilted leaves from a hibiscus plant. He rose, dusting off the sand. A strange but welcome flicker of curiosity danced in his chest. Not necessarily romantic, just a simple human need for connection, for conversation in this new place. But the moment passed, and he hesitated, unsure if he was ready to introduce himself. Instead, he turned away, letting the gentle waves remind him he had plenty of time to discover who he was beyond the wreckage of his old life. The next morning brought a brilliant sunrise that turned the sky into a watercolored canvas of pink and gold. Tyler woke early, determined to experience the local culture before the day's heat became stifling. He slipped on comfortable khakis and a short-sleeved linen shirt, feeling more relaxed in this casual attire than he had in any suit back in Chicago. He drove a rented Jeep along the coastal highway until he found a small cafe overlooking the ocean. A painted wooden sign reading Mar Azul Cafe hung above the door. White wicker chairs clustered around tables on an open-air patio, salt-tinged breezes drifting through. Tyler settled at a table in the corner, scanning a menu in Spanish. A kind waitress approached, recommending a local coffee blend and fresh-caught fish tacos. He nodded gratefully, letting her choose for him. Might as well embrace the unknown, he thought. Sipping the coffee rich, slightly sweet, he felt a peaceful hush settle inside him. The events of Chicago, The trial, Vanessa's tears, they all felt distant, as though from another lifetime. He stared at the turquoise waves cresting against the rocky shore below the cafe. Maybe I can heal here, he mused, inhaling the aroma of coffee beans and salty air. A soft voice interrupted. Excuse me, Tyler, right? He turned to see the woman from the neighboring Villa Scarlet, if memory served, standing with a gentle smile. She wore a simple sundress patterned with small hibiscus flowers and held a woven bag in one hand. Hi, she added, shifting from foot to foot. I recognize you from the house next door. I'm Scarlet. Tyler rose politely, smiling. Yes, I'm Tyler. We're neighbors. She offered a slight laugh, her dark eyes warm. I saw you on the beach last night. I usually take a walk at sunset, but didn't want to intrude. Her voice carried an easy warmth, like a soothing melody. He gestured to the empty chair across from him. Please, join me if you'd like. Scarlet hesitated only a moment before accepting. As she settled in, the waitress came by, and Scarlet ordered a small pastry and tea. Once the waitress left, Scarlet turned to him, curiosity shining in her gaze. You arrived recently? She asked, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. I noticed the moving truck a few days ago. He nodded. I did. Well, it's a bit of a long story, but I'm settling in, trying to figure out life here. A sympathetic shadow crossed her face, as though she sensed something deeper in his words. Costa Rica is wonderful for reflection, she said softly. I came here for a similar reason, to find some peace after my husband passed away. Tyler's heart sank a little. I'm sorry, he murmured, recalling that detail about her being widowed. She simply nodded, a touch of sadness tugging at her features. The waitress arrived with their orders. Scarlet sipped her tea, smiling as though trying to brighten the moment. I hope you enjoy your time here, she said. If you need any recommendations, places to see, things to try, I'd be happy to help. Tyler met her gaze and felt a fleeting warmth that had been absent for so long. Not romance exactly, but something akin to solace. That would be great, he replied. I'd like to explore. Honestly, I'm not sure where to start. Scarlet chuckled, pointing out the window toward the coast. Well, the beaches here are amazing, and so are the hidden waterfalls further inland. There's a local orchard with the best fruit I've ever tasted. She paused, a playful twinkle in her eye. Plenty of adventures if you're up for them. He found himself smiling more naturally than he had in weeks. Thank you. Yes, I'd love that. They chatted easily, about the local fisherman's market, about Scarlet's small garden of potted plants she carefully tended. With each passing moment, Tyler felt layers of tension peeling away. He realized it was the first time in ages he was enjoying a conversation without the weight of betrayal clouding his mind. When Scarlet stood to leave, she left behind a subtle hint of lilac perfume in the air, like a gentle reminder of sweetness. I'll see you around, she said, shouldering her bag. Don't be a stranger. Tyler watched her walk away, the morning sunlight catching her hair like strands of spun gold. A new feeling stirred in his chest, hope perhaps, or the promise of a future not defined by pain. He finished his coffee, gazing at the waves, quietly grateful for this fresh start. Days turned into weeks, each sunrise in Costa Rica bringing Tyler a little more peace. He fell into a soothing routine, early mornings on the beach, afternoons exploring nearby towns, evenings savoring the tropical breeze from his villa's balcony. Yet he couldn't deny the slow churn of emotions beneath it all, lingering pain from the divorce, the phantom ache of lost love, and the cautious stirrings of curiosity about his neighbor Scarlet. On a warm Saturday evening, he found himself strolling by the shore with Scarlet, having agreed to meet for a casual walk. The sky above was a tapestry of orange and purple, the sun dipping below the horizon in a final blaze. Waves curled onto the sand in gentle arcs, leaving foamy lace at their edges. They walked side by side, the conversation meandering from local wildlife to favorite childhood memories. Tyler noticed how Scarlet's soft laughter blended perfectly with the hush of the sea, each story she told carrying a tender note of resilience. She spoke of her late husband with fond sadness, explaining how he'd loved adventure sports. I never quite got into bungee jumping, she joked, but I tried for his sake. Tyler smiled, remembering all the times he'd compromised with Vanessa back when their marriage was still strong. But that memory no longer stung the way it once did. Some part of him had begun healing. They reached a spot where the beach curved inward, forming a small cove dotted with smooth rocks. Scarlett pointed at the horizon. "Look, sunset's at its peak," she said, voice hushed. He followed her gaze. The sky glowed a brilliant gold, the sun's final rays painting the water in shimmering orange. A mild breeze ruffled his hair, and the air smelled of salt and damp sand. Tyler felt his chest swell with a warm gratitude he hadn't experienced in a long time. "I can't thank you enough," he murmured, surprising himself with the admission. Scarlett arched an eyebrow. "For what?" He dug his toes into the sand, contemplating how to phrase it. "For reminding me there's life beyond heartbreak. I came here thinking I'd just hide away, nurse my wounds. But talking to you, sharing little things, it's helped me remember I'm still alive." Scarlett's cheeks colored slightly in the evening light. "You've helped me too," she said softly. "I've been on my own for a while now. Sometimes I forget how to let someone else into my world." They stood quietly for a moment, the surf's gentle lullaby filling the air. Tyler turned to her. "Scarlett, there's something I should say. I'm recently divorced, and it was bad. I'm not ready for anything serious, maybe not for a long time. But this, spending time with you, it means a lot." The words tumbled out, open and unguarded. She offered a kind, understanding smile. "I figured you were going through something. I've seen that look before, the mix of sadness and relief." Her gaze was comforting, without judgment. "We can just be friends, or companions. We can figure it out, no rush." His heart loosened as if freed from a tight grip. "I appreciate that." Scarlett nodded, then flicked her eyes back to the sea. In that moment, no more words were needed. The fading sunlight framed them both against the twilight sky, two people touched by tragedy, finding solace in quiet empathy. Tyler gently reached out, touching her hand. She didn't pull away. Together they observed the sun's final descent, darkness gradually embracing the sky. Yet for the first time in months, Tyler felt neither fear nor despair, just a quiet acceptance of the past and a cautious hope for the future. The midday sun beat down on Tyler's tranquil Costa Rican villa, the heat pressing gently on every surface. In the distance, waves crashed softly against the shore, a rhythm that usually soothed him. But today, his heart pounded with tension. He stood at the tall gates of his property, staring at a figure he never expected to see this far from home, Vanessa. Her eyes, redrimmed from crying, still held a spark of determination. She clutched a small handbag in one hand, the other trembling slightly at her side. Sweat glistened on her forehead, and her hair was pulled into a messy bun, as though she'd traveled here in a hurry without much thought to appearance. The tropical sun highlighted every line of regret etched into her face. "Tyler," she choked out, voice thick with emotion. "Please let me talk to you. Two need to explain." He glanced behind her, scanning the deserted road leading from the main highway. No sign of a taxi waiting. A swirl of conflicting feelings coursed through him. Anger, hurt, a sliver of pity. What is she doing here, he thought, recalling how final everything had felt after the court's decision and his move to Costa Rica. "You're a long way from Chicago," Tyler finally managed, his voice steady but cold. "What's going on?" She looked down at her sandals, her posture deflating as though a balloon had been punctured. I booked a flight as soon as I worked up the courage. I know it's strange showing up like this, but we left things so badly, and I can't live with it." Tears glistened in her eyes, but she held them back. He hesitated. The last thing he wanted was a dramatic scene. But if I turn her away at the gate, a familiar sense of decency nudged him. With a sigh, he unlocked the gate. "Come in," he said quietly, "but keep it brief." Vanessa followed him up the path, passing by the flowering shrubs and palm trees swaying in the humid breeze. Her gaze roamed over the villa's whitewashed walls, the broad windows overlooking the sea. A paradise I ran to, Tyler thought. Away from her. They reached the front door, and he let her in. The interior was airy and bright. the living room's large windows showcasing waves glittering under the afternoon sun. Vanessa looked around, eyes filling with fresh tears. "So this is where you've been," she whispered. "It's beautiful." He said nothing, gesturing for her to sit on the sofa. A soft rustle from the side yard caught his attention, and he glanced through a window. Scarlett, his neighbor, was tending some potted plants along the shared fence. She turned briefly, her features tightening with concern. The wariness in her eyes signaled she'd spotted Vanessa, but she made no move to interfere. Tyler closed the door, forcing himself to keep his composure. "All right," he said, crossing his arms. "You wanted to talk? So talk." Vanessa perched on the edge of the sofa, twisting her fingers anxiously. "I am so sorry, Tyler. I realized too late what I threw away. It was never about you not being enough. I was just lost. And now I see that I ruined everything." Her voice cracked, but Tyler held firm, remembering how her declarations of needing excitement had led them here. "You can't just walk in and say sorry," he said, eyes narrowing. "You made choices. We signed the divorce papers. You walked out of that courtroom with almost nothing by your own doing. What else is left?" She blinked back tears. "Maybe a second chance. Maybe we can start over." Her words carried a trembling desperation. Taylor wasn't important. He never mattered. It was all about me trying to feel alive again. A bitter taste filled Tyler's mouth, and betraying me was the best way to do that? He leaned against the wall, recalling every painful detail of that hotel night. "Vanessa, you humiliated me. Don't you get that? My love for you died the moment you invited me to watch you cheat like it was some twisted gift." She inhaled sharply, face contorting with guilt. "I know, and it's tearing me apart, but you're the only one I've ever truly loved." He laughed hollowly, shaking his head. "You have a funny way of showing it." Outside, the sun blazed higher, brightening the living room with a harsh glow. Vanessa swallowed, lowering her gaze. "I've lost everything. The house, the money, you. The more I sit in that emptiness, the more I realize I don't want any of it if I can't have you." He clenched his jaw, anger and pity warring inside him. Why now, he thought. She'd had months plenty of time to reflect, to apologize sincerely, to come clean before the divorce was finalized. Instead, she'd waited until his life was beginning to mend. "I can't do this," Tyler said, his voice firm. "You can't show up here and expect me to drop everything because you decided you're lonely." Her tears finally spilled over, and she sobbed quietly. "Please, Tyler, I'm begging you. Let's just talk it through, see if there's a chance." "We spent 23 years building a life." He shook his head, hands trembling with pent-up frustration. "We spent 23 years building a life that you threw away for a fling. I'm done." She opened her mouth to speak, but words seemed to fail her. Outside, he caught a glimpse of Scarlett stepping away from the fence, presumably giving them space. A pang of gratitude surfaced. He wasn't sure he wanted Scarlett to witness this. Vanessa shifted, tears still streaking her cheeks. Where are you staying?" she asked in a small voice. "Should I find a hotel nearby?" Tyler's eyes hardened. "Yes, you should," he said coolly. "I don't want you here." The finality in his voice stung even him. But it was the truth. Whatever they had was gone legally, emotionally, every way possible. Vanessa broke down again, sobbing into her palms. He stood motionless for a moment, torn between lingering pity and self-preservation. He heard a soft rustle behind him. Scarlett had quietly approached the open patio door, likely concerned about the raised voices. He lifted his chin, signaling to Scarlett that he had this under control, and she gave a slight nod, stepping away again. "Thank you," he thought silently, grateful for her respect. Vanessa gradually stemmed her tears, rubbing her reddened eyes. "I won't leave until we talk properly," she declared, voice trembling. "I didn't come all this way to be turned away like a stranger." Tyler sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Fine," he said at last. "Stay in town for a day or two. I'll talk to you, but not here. And not now. I need time." She nodded, relief flickering in her eyes. With that, she rose unsteadily from the sofa. "All right. Thank you, Tyler," she whispered, inching toward the door as though hoping for a final embrace. None came. He led her out, the mid-afternoon heat washing over them again. She hesitated at the gate, turning back with a tearful smile, as if expecting some small gesture. He simply locked the gate behind her, watching as she trudged down the dusty road until she faded into the swaying palms. A heavy stillness settled. Tyler closed his eyes, anger and sorrow mixing in his chest. Then, from the corner of his eye, he saw Scarlett's concerned face peeking over the fence line, expression etched with questions. He offered a faint nod of reassurance, though he wasn't sure how reassured he felt. The stage was set for yet another confrontation, one he hoped wouldn't destroy the fragile peace he'd found in this coastal haven. Afternoon heat mellowed into evening's softer warmth as Tyler paced the living room, windows wide open to let the sea breeze drift inside. He tossed glances at his phone, half expecting a message from Vanessa. She'd found a small hotel in a nearby town, at least that was the last rumor from the local taxi driver who had dropped her off earlier. Finally, a hesitant knock tapped at the door. Tyler inhaled, steeling himself. He opened it, finding Vanessa on the threshold, arms crossed defensively. Her hair was down now, loose waves framing a face that looked more vulnerable than ever. "Can we talk?" she whispered. He glanced around, noticing the sky outside was streaked in deep orange and pink. He nodded, stepping aside. As she walked in, he glimpsed Scarlett's silhouette near her own house, watchful but keeping her distance. Something fluttered in his stomach, an irrational fear that Vanessa's presence could ruin the tentative bond forming with Scarlett. Once inside, Vanessa sank into an armchair, her eyes scanning the open layout of the villa. "It's really nice," she murmured, throat tight. "You've done well for yourself here." He snorted softly, leaning against the dining table. "Didn't you hear? I had it even before we ended." She swallowed, guilt flickering in her eyes. "I know. I found out after the divorce. I never realized how prepared you were for everything." He nodded, arms folded. "You forced my hand. I had to protect what was mine." She stiffened. "It's just, I never thought you'd actually go through with it, you know? I thought you'd always take me back." Her words stung, reaffirming the arrogance she'd displayed back then. Tyler forced a steady tone. "We can't change the past. Why are you here, Vanessa? Really?" She gazed at him, tears threatening again. "Because I can't stand the regret anymore. I messed up, Tyler. I was selfish, impulsive, and I destroyed us for the sake of excitement. I thought we'd pull through it, but it was wrong." He inhaled slowly, memories swirling of that final hotel scene, her brazen invitation, the humiliation he'd felt. "Wrong is an understatement," he muttered, voice rough. She rose abruptly, crossing the room to face him. "It was a mistake," she insisted, eyes pleading. "But it was never about loving Taylor or wanting to hurt you. It was some twisted fantasy I convinced myself we both needed. I see now how insane that was." Silence fell, charged with tension. Through the open window, the ocean murmured gently, as if reminding them of how far they'd come to have this conversation. He studied her face, familiar yet so distant. "And you think words can fix it?" he asked, bitterness lacing his tone. She dropped her gaze. "No," she admitted, "not completely. But maybe they can mend something. We had 23 years, Tyler. We built memories, overcame hardships. You know me better than anyone. Do you really believe I wanted to ruin that?" His chest tightened. He did know her once, or so he thought. But this version of Vanessa was a stranger who had inflicted the deepest betrayal. "Even if I believed you," he said, voice low, "what makes you think I'd want to risk that again?" She opened her mouth but faltered, tears trembling in her eyes. "Because I'm still me," she whispered. "I'm the same woman who stood by you through countless challenges. The same woman who said yes to a lifetime with you. We lost ourselves somewhere, but maybe we can find a way back?" His mind raced with old memories, the joyous wedding, the random road trips, laughter over silly inside jokes. Then images of her with Taylor crashed through like a bitter wave. "No," he said finally, regret slicing through his voice. "You're not the same woman who promised me forever. That woman wouldn't have lied to me." Vanessa's lip trembled. "It was just sex, Tyler. I still love you." He felt his anger flare. Sex in front of me. You don't think that matters? You humiliated me. Let another man touch you while I was in the same room. She flinched, as though struck. I know, she said shakily, and I hate myself for it. He stared at her, realizing with harsh clarity that no matter how she begged, his heart had turned cold to her. The wounds were too deep. When you paraded him in front of me, he murmured, you sapped all the love I had left. It's gone. Tears spilled from her eyes, and she reached for his hand, but he pulled back, jaw clenched. Vanessa, we're done, he said, each word feeling like a final nail. You need to accept it. She let out a ragged sob, sinking back onto the couch. You can't forgive me? He shook his head. No, I can't. Even if I tried, I don't think my heart would let me. He recalled how Martin once told him heartbreak could be final. Now standing here, he believed it. I'm sorry, he added, surprising even himself with a shred of compassion. Vanessa buried her face in her hands, shoulders trembling. He let her cry, torn between pity and the strong urge to send her away. Finally, she took a shaky breath, wiping her tears. Please just give me some time. Don't make me leave yet. Let's keep talking. He set his jaw. Nothing's changed, he said simply. Stay in Costa Rica as long as you want, take a vacation, but don't expect me to meet up for any more heart-to-heart confessions. I've moved on. The words settled heavily between them. Vanessa searched his face, clearly hoping for a sign of reluctance. Finding none, she dissolved into quiet sobs, hugging her arms tightly around her waist. Outside, the sky had darkened into a deep cobalt, and a single light burned in Scarlett's yard. Tyler glanced toward it, recalling the calm, steady presence she'd offered him these past weeks. The contrast to this broken figure in his living room couldn't be sharper. At last, he broke the silence. It's late, he said gently but firmly. You should go. He expected another protest, but Vanessa only nodded, swallowing back fresh tears. She stood, hand trembling on the doorknob. Turning to him one last time, she opened her mouth maybe to apologize again, but nothing came out. Instead, she slipped outside, the night air swallowing her grief. Tyler closed the door, leaning his forehead against the cool wood. A strange sense of relief mixed with sorrow coursed through him. I'm free, he told himself. This is over. Yet an uneasy feeling nagged him, as though Vanessa's desperation might manifest in ways he hadn't anticipated. Dawn broke gray and muted, clouds skimming the horizon, hinting at possible afternoon showers. Tyler brewed strong coffee in the villa's open-concept kitchen, his thoughts still tangled in last night's confrontation. He gulped the bitter liquid, steeling himself for whatever Vanessa might try next. Scarlett's gentle knock at the open patio door startled him. She stood there in a loose linen top and shorts, brow furrowed with concern. Morning, she said softly, stepping inside when he waved her in. I heard raised voices last night. Everything okay? He pressed his lips together. Vanessa showed up. The mention of her name sent a fresh pang of stress through his chest. It was intense. Scarlett's eyes flickered with sympathy. I won't pry, but if you need to talk, he nodded. Thanks. He poured another mug of coffee and offered it to her, noticing how her presence brought him comfort. She wants me back, he said wearily, taking a seat at the small kitchen table. Claims she realized her mistakes, but I can't. He hesitated. I can't feel anything for her except hurt. Scarlett sipped the coffee, nodding thoughtfully. You shouldn't push yourself to feel anything else. She made her choices. Her calm acknowledgement steadied him. I know, he agreed. It's just seeing her like that desperate crying dredges up old emotions. Guilt. But then I remember what she did. They fell silent, the sound of tropical birds chirping in the distance. Scarlett reached out and gently touched his hand. Trust yourself, she said. You've already been through the worst. You deserve peace. A faint smile tugged at his lips. You're right, he said, gratitude sweeping in. He thought about how she'd quietly supported him, never judging, simply offering kindness. It felt like sunlight breaking through clouds. Suddenly, a sharp rap on the front door jolted them. Tyler rose, heart thumping. He glanced at Scarlett, who looked equally concerned. He opened the door to find Vanessa once more, her cheeks tear-stained and eyes swollen. "We need to talk," she said, voice raw. Tyler's shoulders stiffened, a new wave of frustration churning. "I told you!" But Vanessa stepped forward, noticing Scarlett behind him. Her face twisted with a flash of jealousy or shock. "Who's she?" she demanded, voice trembling. Scarlett stood quietly, posture guarded. Tyler felt anger flare. "This is my neighbor, Scarlett," he said tersely, "and you're trespassing again." Vanessa's eyes darted between them. "How long after the divorce did you start this?" she spat, tears brimming. "Is that why you can't forgive me, because you found someone else?" Scarlett took a step back, shaking her head. "It's not," she began calmly, but Tyler cut in, voice low and firm. "Enough," he said, glaring at Vanessa. "Scarlett has nothing to do with us. You lost the right to question my life choices when you slept with another man and rubbed it in my face." Vanessa stumbled, tears sliding freely now. "Tyler, please, I'm begging you," she said, her tone veering between desperation and anger. "Come back to me. Don't let her take my place." He shut his eyes, breathing deeply. She just won't let go, he realized. He thought of the fragile hope he'd begun nurturing with Scarlett, hope that might vanish if Vanessa kept causing chaos. "I don't belong to you," he said quietly, opening his eyes to fix Vanessa with a cold stare. "We're finished. Stop trying to manipulate me." Vanessa's face crumpled. She shot a last venomous look at Scarlett before darting outside, sobbing. Tyler watched her go, chest tight with a combination of pity and anger. Scarlett approached cautiously, her expression etched with concern. "I'm sorry," she murmured. "I didn't mean to make things awkward." Tyler shook his head, forcing a small, reassuring smile. "You didn't do anything wrong. Vanessa's the one who needs to face reality." He swallowed, pain and relief colliding within him. "I can't keep having these confrontations." Scarlett's eyes were warm. "Maybe she'll realize she can't change the past," she said softly, "and leave you to move forward." He nodded, hoping her words proved true, because the sight of Vanessa's torment, day after day, threatened to unravel everything he'd rebuilt. Later that evening, a sudden knock rattled the door. Tyler's stomach flipped, dreading yet another emotional ambush. He braced himself, but to his relief, it was Scarlett, holding a folded piece of paper in her hand. "I found this on the fence post," she said quietly. "It's addressed to you." Tyler took it, brow creasing. He opened the note, eyes scanning Vanessa's looping script. "Tyler, I'm leaving tomorrow. There's nothing left for me here. I just wanted you to know I truly love you and always will, no matter what happened. I see you've moved on. I'll respect your decision. Goodbye." He sighed heavily, folding the note and slipping it into his pocket. "She's leaving," he said, relief and sadness mingling in his voice. Scarlett nodded. "You okay?" He exhaled a long breath, meeting Scarlett's gaze. "Yeah," he admitted. I think I will be." Several months passed in a gentle blur of sunlit mornings, languid beach walks, and quiet dinner conversations. Tyler's life in Costa Rica was no longer just an escape. It had grown into something genuine. He'd settled into routines with Scarlett by his side, each of them respecting the other's boundaries and vulnerabilities. On a breezy late afternoon, Jackson, Tyler's son, arrived for a visit his first time in Costa Rica. Behind him stepped Henry, Tyler's father, white hair glinting in the tropical sun. Tyler felt a surge of happiness seeing them both. They embraced on the villa's wide porch, the sea's rhythmic hiss echoing in the background. Jackson marveled at the lush greenery and bright flowers. "Dad," he said, grinning, "you picked a real slice of heaven here." Henry nodded, an approving smile on his face. "Good to see you healing, son," he said, his voice warm. Tyler swallowed a lump in his throat, touched by their acceptance. Scarlett appeared with a pitcher of fresh fruit juice, greeting them shyly. Tyler introduced her, noticing how Jackson's gaze filled with curiosity and understanding. "So this is the neighbor you've mentioned," Jackson teased gently, exchanging polite greetings with her. They all settled around a wooden table under a shaded pergola, conversation flowing easily. Tyler caught himself smiling more in a few minutes than he had in entire months back in Chicago. Across from him, Scarlett's eyes sparkled with quiet contentment, and Jackson asked about local wildlife with genuine excitement. As dusk approached, Tyler gestured for them to follow him down to the beach. The sky was aflame with pink and gold, the sun descending in a grand show of color. Henry walked slowly, leaning on a cane but determined to join the spectacle. Scarlett and Jackson trailed behind, voices light with camaraderie. They stopped near the shoreline, where gentle waves lapped at their ankles. Tyler inhaled the salty breeze, turning to face his father and son. "I've been thinking," he said softly. "I want us to celebrate. Not a big ceremony, but something meaningful. A small gathering here at the beach." Henry arched an eyebrow. "What are we celebrating?" Tyler glanced at Scarlett, warmth pulsing in his chest. "New beginnings," he replied, his voice steady. A sense of moving forward, leaving the past behind. Scarlett flushed slightly, but her smile was radiant. She slid her hand into Tyler's, the simple gesture speaking volumes. The next day, phone calls were made. A local officiant found a casual vow exchange to honor the bond growing between Tyler and Scarlett. Not an extravagant wedding, but a promise of companionship and respect. When the day arrived, the beach glowed under a brilliant sunset, painting the water in ripples of fire and coral. Jackson helped arrange a small arch of driftwood and white flowers, Henry settling into a chair with a proud smile. A few new friends from the village gathered around, curious and supportive. Tyler, dressed in a casual linen shirt and trousers, stood beneath the arch, heart pounding with anticipation. Scarlett approached in a simple ivory sundress, hair loosely pinned, a single hibiscus tucked behind her ear. Though the ceremony was modest, Tyler felt every bit as awed as if it were a grand affair. The officiant spoke a few gentle words about trust, healing, and new chances. Tyler and Scarlett exchanged quiet vows, no grand speeches, just honest confessions of gratitude and hope. The warm breeze carried away the echoes of old sorrows, replacing them with promise. As they shared a brief kiss, applause from Jackson, Henry, and the small group of onlookers filled the air. For Tyler, it felt like stepping fully into the sunlight after a long storm. His father wiped a tear, giving him a thumbs up. Jackson grinned wide, snapping photos on his phone. Scarlett's hand in his felt like an anchor, both comforting and exhilarating. They ended the evening around a bonfire on the sand. Waves glimmered under moonlight, laughter mingling with the crackling fire. No lavish reception, just genuine closeness, and the sense that life had allowed Tyler a second chance at happiness. Near midnight, as the embers died down, Tyler slipped an arm around Scarlett's waist. He gazed at the shimmering expanse of the Pacific, remembering every painful step that brought him here. He recalled Vanessa's betrayal, the divorce, the heartbreak, and the unexpected path leading to this simple but profound moment of joy. He leaned close to Scarlett, her hair smelling faintly of coconut and sea salt. "Thank you," he whispered, unsure how else to convey the depth of his gratitude. She looked up, eyes glowing in the firelight. "For what?" "For being here. For reminding me I can trust again," he murmured, voice thick with emotion. She smiled, pressing her forehead to his. "It's a new journey, Tyler. I'm glad we can take it together." He nodded, heart brimming with quiet certainty. The scars of the past hadn't vanished, but they felt distant footnotes in a story that had found a hopeful new chapter. They stood there, hand in hand, waves lapping at their feet under a blanket of stars. Tyler felt light, like the entire ocean breeze had swept away his burdens. In the hush of that tropical night, he realized he'd finally come home to himself, to someone who valued him, and to a future that burned bright as the moonlit horizon.